afternoon. So good to have each and every one of you here for the afternoon sessions. First up, we're going to have Brother Terry Yoder come and preach. But before he does that, let's all stand. We're going to have a word of prayer, ask God to help us in these sessions. And for everything that is accomplished, we are going to do what? Give him praise. Yes, good. All right, let's pray. Lord, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the opportunity that we have to gather together to worship you, to lift up your name. I pray that you would help Brother Yoder as he would speak. And for everything that is accomplished, we will praise and thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Before you're seated, you will turn to someone. You will smile at them so big that they show not only your top teeth, but your bottom teeth as well. Turn around once and then sit down. All right. I saw several people not turn around once before they sat down, but it is okay. All right. Brother Terry Yoder is coming to speak for us at this time. He is the associate pastor at the Hamilton Heights God's Missionary Church. Lord bless him as he speaks to us this afternoon.
Thank you. It's so good to be here this afternoon and speak. And I'm just trusting that God will help today. It's not like I have a message or a sermon per se, but when Pastor Malloyd, not Pastor, I'm used to him saying that. When President Malloyd, he asked me to speak, he asked me to share my life story. And as I was thinking over my life and just a verse that stuck out to me, one of my favorite verses is in Proverbs 3, and I know you know it all. It's verses 5 and 6. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not on thy own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct thy paths." How many of you like going on a road trip here? Not now, but I know many of you. I love a good road trip. My wife hates a road trip. Like the first 10, 15 minutes she's done with a road trip. But I love a good road trip. And one of the important things when on a road trip is to figure out what is the best way to get from point A to point B. For most of us, for me this afternoon, what I always do is I pull out my phone and I go on Google Maps and I just do a quick search, a type in, and see where I should go, how I should get there. Maybe for others, they use a GPS, and if you're real old, and I can still remember it, the epic road trip, you go on mapquest.com, type it out, you print out your directions, and there you go. You have your big giant map checking where you're at as you go along your way. Always trying to figure out what's the best way to get from point A to point B. And for me, the best way normally is the fastest way to get there. The fastest way. Sometimes, though, I'll take it a little bit easier. I'll go the scenic way or the way that I think is the shortest. And I often wish that the direct path was the shortest, but it isn't always the case. Sometimes I can go a longer way and go faster if the speed limit allows it or anything like that. And I feel like in life so many times, we like the direct path from where we are now to where we think or where we hope we're going in the future. But life isn't about direct paths. So many times there's curves, there's twists. Every once in a while it feels like you're doing a U-turn, like where did that actually come from? But I would remind you today, this verse, to trust in the Lord. And it ends with saying, "He shall direct thy paths." Trust. I feel like it's been a major theme in my life, and I want it to be a major theme in yours. When we trust in the Lord with all of our heart, God wants to direct each and every one of our paths. It may not seem like the direction He's leading us is the right direction. It may seem it's the total wrong direction, but God will be there. God will be leading and guiding if we trust in Him with all of our heart. I grew up in a Christian home. I was blessed to say that I had parents who served Christ, parents that took me to church every single day. I have siblings that serve Christ that are doing their very best, and I love being in a Christian family. And I hope and I pray that every single one of you young people here have that in your life. The fact that you can have a Christian parents, a Christian siblings, and you can talk to them about God. And because of that, my salvation story is different than most of what you hear. I was saved at a very, very young age. And honestly, I don't have great memories at a young age, and so for most of it, it's a little foggy at best. I don't know if I can say the exact moment, remember the exact time when I gave my heart and life to Jesus, but I remember wanting to serve him ever since I was young and knowing that he had saved me. And as I grew up and grew older, there were bumps. There was times of failure along the way, but every time God was right there, I could run right back to him. And that memory of getting saved as a young boy continued to seem to grow fainter and fainter away. And Satan knew this. And one of the things that he always used to do was to throw doubt on my mind. I could remember we moved churches in my early preteen years. And as my preteen to teen years, we started attending the Beavertown God's Missionary Church over right across the parking lot in the Bates Center now that it's called. And I can recall at youth camps and different events wondering and questioning, had God truly saved me? What was on the inside? And I'd go up and I'd pray. I didn't feel any different. I thought, I'm not doing anything wrong that I know of. Seems like everything's going well, but there was still doubt in my mind. And it was on one of those trips to the altar over at the Bates Center, and as I was praying about that same issue, that Satan kept on casting doubt in my mind. As I was praying, I remember Pastor Jeff Stratton, who now I am so thankfully able to serve under. He was praying with me, and he gave me some good godly wisdom and some good godly advice up there at the altar over the matter. And he said, Satan, he's a liar. If you know that you're serving God, if you know that God has saved you in your heart, you can claim it. You can put your trust on it. You can have faith in what God has done for you. And I remember that moment as a milestone moment in my life because when I planted the flag and said, God, I trust that what you've done for me as a young boy still sticks with me today. God had truly saved me then, and I knew that he did. I was totally his, and I was wanting to serve him. And that's what I did my best to do. I did my best to serve him. I loved anything that we could do as a youth group. I loved going on missions trips. I loved youth camp. Such a fun time. I loved when we had our gym nights with the Beavertown Youth Group. All these exciting things. And as I continued to grow up and grow older at Beavertown, I continued to attend all those things and be plugged in and be involved in all that I could do. But I didn't really know what my future held. I didn't have the end path. I didn't know what my point B destination was. I really didn't know what to do, and I hadn't felt clear about anything in particular. And President Matt, he was my pastor then again, I'll say, he would have chats with me. He would invite me to breakfast. We'd sit down, we'd talk, and he'd ask, he'd say, Terry, do you feel any leading, any guiding, any direction in your life? And I can always remember clearly saying, I have felt nothing. Nothing about if I had a calling. Nothing about if there was a Bible college God had spoken to me specifically about. Nothing if there was any future plans that I had. And I just continued on going through life. Right after I had graduated from high school in the year 2014, I didn't really know what to do. I was working. I had gotten a job. And I decided that it would be good to go to Bible college. And I'll just put a plug. I think it is good to go to Bible college, even if you really don't know what you should do. And so I did. I took a couple of classes. I worked as well. During this time, I took my basic, Old Testament survey, New Testament survey, Gospels 1 and 2, all those good basic classes, the 710s of Penview. Gotta love those right there. I took all of them. I didn't really know what was going on. I did my best in them. I didn't have a plan per se, but I continued to do my best to serve God. There were still ups and downs spiritually. There was moments still of failure, but God, He always was there. I'm glad that He always helped me back up again. And at the end of those semesters, I didn't feel like I needed to continue on, and so I just started working full-time in that 2015. I continued to help. I taught some youth Sunday school. I went on missions trips. I went to youth camp still. And on it went, and life just seemed like it was rolling along. Not sure what exactly was going on. I didn't have that goal. I was still just trusting God as far as I knew, but I never knew what was God's plan for me. What was God's path for me? I wanted a direct path. That would be nice, God. And it was in the summer of 2017. I remember I was an assistant coach at GMYC, and the theme that year was All In. Bright red shirt, just said All In across the front. So it was a great theme. And the speaker was Brother Aaron McCarty. And one evening, as he was preaching on David and the plague that had happened when David had done his census. And God, He had stopped the plague there at the threshing floor of Araunah. And as He stopped it there, David went to Araunah asking to buy the land. He wanted to build an altar there for God for stopping the plague, and this is what he wanted to do, but Araunah had different plans. He wanted to give all that he had to David for free. He wanted to give his land. He wanted to give his oxen. He wanted to give his tools of his trade. He wanted to give each and every part, not for a price, not to be bought out in any sense, but he wanted to give it to God for free. And the part that stood out to me that evening, I don't remember too much else what Brother McCarty spoke on, was the point that Araunah was willing to give up his job, his way to make money, all that he had. He said, God, it's yours if you want it, for free. And God spoke to me so clearly as I went up to the altar and prayed, and He asked me, would I be willing to give up my job if He asked me? Would I be willing to trust in Him? Would I let Him decide to direct my path? Could I say yes to Him if He asked me to be willing to give up my job? And in that moment of prayer, and as I was praying there, I felt so clearly as I surrendered and said, yes, God, I trust You. You can have that part of my life. It's yours. God gave me a direct path, you may say. It seemed a little late, but God called me to preach. And God called me specifically to Penview. And as I got up from the altar, I remember that day, still till right now, how God gave me the calling, and something that will forever stick with me, because it's such a milestone moment in my life when I trusted Him with my whole heart. I love those type of moments. Those moments don't happen every single day. Most of the time, it's a day-by-day thing. But that was such an awesome thing. And when I got up from the altar, I know I had work to do. It's easy to say yes at the altar and then go home and stop trusting. The altar is the easiest place to say yes. But it's when you're home, when you have to say something else, that's when the yeses come a little bit harder. But God helped me to go to work, and I told Him, listen, God has called me to preach. I need to stop working full time. And so I prepared. I contacted Penview. I got everything ready, and I started going to Penview to preach. It was such an awesome thing because God had directed my path. It didn't make sense. It felt like way back there in like 2014, where was the direction back there? It felt like now I had gone on with my life, and now I was making this U-turn right back to where I was already there. Why didn't God give me any directive when I was all the way back there? But I know that in God's perfect timing, He put me there at that place in that moment because that's what He wanted me to do. God, He laid there at Penview good godly friends that I still am able to keep in contact with. God gave me a good love story Everyone loves a love story. And God, He laid out that perfect plan right there for me, so that it would have been that December to start dating Jackie. And soon, a little over a year later, we got married. God gave that perfect love story right in His perfect timing. As I said, I never really understood why He waited at the moment. But looking back on it now, I understand that God, He had the plan all directed out. All I had to do was trust Him. All I had to do was follow Him. It was there at Penview. I remember that God spoke to me about some specific issues in my life, some things that He needed full surrender and full control, and the one issue was my phone. Oh, the age-old phone. And as I prayed, I said, God, that phone is yours. Whatever you want, if you want me to get rid of it, if you want me to get a flip phone, God, I can get a flip phone if you need me to. And God, He sanctified me entirely. He gave me the victory right there at Penview, that winter revival. I remember I settled it there with God. I trusted in Him. He guided, He directed in my life. And as I've continued to serve Him, I have continued to see God's direction in my life. It hasn't always seemed easy, but there's always milestone points, always big things when you serve God. I can remember as I was getting ready, it was my junior year, I think it was, of college, I knew I had a bill coming up. I had got something, I knew I had this bill, and I wanted to sell my car to pay for this. And I had tried all fall to sell my car, and I could not sell it. And so I waited again. I tried in the spring. And wouldn't you know, the very day I sold my car was the day the bill came. And God met that need exactly when He needed to. All I had to do was trust in Him, and He was directing my path. God has continued to work. He has made all the difference in my life. My wife and I started going down to Chambersburg, Pennsylvania on the weekends in my senior year to help down there. And God has led us there to serve there. And God has continued to work in our church down there. And as we moved down there, I was in need of a job. And I had applied a couple different places. And finally, it had come, I got interest from someone. I went there, and it was a little bit of a drive. And I thought to myself, as I left, why would I ever want to work there? It's so far. And I didn't have much of a desire, didn't have much a thing, but it seemed like the only door that was open. There didn't seem to be any other option. And I thought, all right, I prayed about it and felt clear that I needed to do something. And so I did. And it was there that first week. There was a man I met. His name was Sean Hess. And Sean, he walked up to me and he introduced himself to me. And we just started talking. And Sean said, he asked me why I moved down here. And I said I was a pastor. I was needing a job. And he was like, I just got saved this spring. This is in 2020. And so most churches in Maryland were closed. And he said, I'm looking for a church. I need to find a church. And I said, well, if you're willing to drive, our church is open. You can come. And Sean, he started attending our church faithfully. And God has used Sean in our children's ministry, in our teen ministry. And Sean has been a blessing in our church. He drives over an hour and 20 minutes or so just to come to church and to help out. I didn't think that job meant anything to me. But God already had a plan in place. All I had to do was trust Him. And as I close this afternoon, young people, I want to remind you, as Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 says, don't lean on your own understanding. Don't lean on that. Don't try to get your path the way you want it to go, what you think is the best way from where you are now to where you want to go. I challenge you to trust in God with your whole heart, to lean on Him, to acknowledge Him. God wants to direct each and every one of your path. And it may not always seem like the path is straight or going the way you think or you would like it to go. But if we're trusting, God is always directing. We don't need to see the whole picture. We don't need to see all the way down the road. But I can acknowledge and I can testify today, when I trusted God, He has blessed me more than I could ever explain, more than I could ever share. And God has directed my life, and I pray and I trust that He will direct your life. I know He will if you trust in Him. Don't give up on Jesus. Don't give up on God. If you've fallen, come back. Serve Him. He wants to lead you. He wants to direct you. All He asks, will you trust Him with your whole heart? Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Brother Yoder. Was that good? Amen. All right. At this time, Sister Joanne Schaefer, wife to Pastor Solomon Schaefer, the associate pastor here at God's Missionary Church here in Beavertown, she's coming to speak for us. I feel as though I can say this about her. She is the lady that is responsible for my wife. Not responsible, but like she got us together. So I would just like to say a heartfelt thank you.
My pleasure.
If she wants to say anything more about it, she can, just as long as it's not detrimental, I guess. But then who am I to say anything? Lord bless you.
Thank you. I'm not trying to start any rumors or anything, but I walked past Ben Smith and he smelled like mouthwash. No, just kidding. And actually, I'm being serious. Like, I forgot to check my teeth when I came up here, so I probably have like roast beef and corn up here. So, live stream, work your magic. Okay. So I feel like Dwayne in Adventures in Odyssey. Oh, and also I forgot to tell you this. I'm not a preacher. Okay? So like when we have interns here, they're supposed to like get out from behind the pulpit and use their hands, and then all the pastors are like, "Oh, great job. They're so good." You know, but I'm standing right back here, guys. I'm hiding, okay? I don't even know where I was going with that. But anyways, yes, I feel like Dwayne in Adventures in Odyssey when his band got their first concert and he said, "Dude, I got my first gig." And that's literally how I feel. I got my first gig. So, anyways, when President Malloyd asked me to speak, like, I just assumed that it would be, like, on extreme fitness and, like, oh, laughter. Thanks, guys. Anyways, but to kind of start this off, I want to explain a little bit about myself. It'll probably help you to, it'll just answer some questions that you might have by the time I get done here. When I was about, I don't even know if I was 1 year old, but my mom was in the house working and she heard like this terrible thud, actually several terrible thuds. And her little pride and joy had fallen down the stairs in a walker, and I survived. But that might explain some things. I fell down the stairs as a child, you guys, and probably hit my head. But anyways, other than that, okay. I'd like to think that I had a fairly normal childhood. I grew up in a great family. I had 3 older brothers. I had an older sister and a younger sister, and of course a mom and a dad. And my parents were really good parents. My dad was friendly. He was a hard worker. He would help anybody. My dad was he was extremely consistent. You could see him every morning at like 4:30 in the morning. He would have his devotions, and he was the type of guy, he would go to work to get the coffee pot on for the people coming in after him. Not me, no. I'm the one coming in 2 minutes before work. I'm like, "Get my coffee." But yeah, I didn't inherit that from my dad. But my dad is the one that introduced me to coffee and to Rush Limbaugh. Woo! Okay, anyways. You're not supposed to, I'm just kidding. And my mom was and is an extremely disciplined person. She's very organized. She's like the Exhibit A homemaker. If she does something right, she wants everybody to do something right. It better be done to perfection. And my mom was very good. I was probably switched in the hospital. I didn't get that training. Anyways, but growing up, she would always remind me, like, "Joanne, make sure you're praying, having your devotions." And it was kind of annoying because it was like whenever I'd pick up a Nancy Drew book, she'd be like, "Have you had your devotions today?" I'm like, "Mom, please, can I just sit down?" Whatever, okay. But other than that, fairly normal. I went to public school most of my life, and I did not actually have a bad experience with that. I went to 5 Points Elementary School, and then I went to Baker Junior High, And then I went to Fairborn High School, and I don't have horror stories. Sorry, I keep forgetting I'm supposed to look around. That makes it look better. Okay, let me scan the crowd. But anyways, I didn't really have a bad experience. Kids didn't really make fun of me. I mean, maybe they did behind my back, but it wasn't like in your face. I don't exactly call it persecution when kids would be like, why do you dress the way you dress? Or why do you look the way you look? And I would just say, because I'm Amish. And they're like, are you really? I'm like, yeah, my horse and buggy's out in the parking lot. And they'd be like, oh my God. But I wasn't embarrassed for how I was. And I would tell them, no, I'm not actually Amish. But I would just like kind of joke around with them and, went with it. And by the way, if you do go to public school, guys, some of you, this is going to be the only time these kids see a real Christian. So don't be ashamed of it and make it count, okay? So my church that I grew up in was a very good church. I was raised at the Franklin Bible Methodist Church. And Dan Stetler was my pastor until I was probably 8 or 9. And then Mark Sankey was my next pastor. And I had a great experience as a child being in a loving and united family, church family. I was very tenderhearted as a little girl. From my earliest memories, I wanted to be a Christian, and I tried to be a good kid. But my main struggles in life, forevermore, were I'm ADD, okay? Okay, let me correct that. I'm actually not ADD. I'm ADD, EFG, HIJK, LMNOP. It's a little crazy. But I would bring home my report card and be praying the whole bus ride home. I'm like, oh, dear Lord, today would be a good day to come back. Please, Lord, before I give my report card to my mom and dad. And I can remember one time in general, I brought home a report card that was less than desired. And my parents gave me a lecture on being slothful. And it was intense. I mean, they did scripture verses, made me do chants. No, not really. They prayed with me. It literally lasted like 42 days and nights. And my mom said during that time, she's like, Joanne, if you would just make straight A's. She knew I always wanted a dog. And my mom's like, no animals in the house. But she goes, Joanne, I promise you, if you make straight A's, I'll buy you a puppy. She knew good and well that wasn't going to happen. And the thing is, all of my siblings were like very smart, and they all made really good grades. She never promised that to any of them. So like my siblings, literally, they all were voted like most likely to be successful and lead happy lives, and I was voted most likely to drive a clown car. Anyways, I was basically just a hyperactive nutcase, and I have no idea where I'm going with any of this. Oh, Lord, help me. But my desire to serve Jesus never wavered, and I was very conscientious also as a kiddo, and probably that started around the age of 12 or 13, and I would like pray all the time. And I would pray like in stores or in church or in restaurants. You would just see me with my eyes closed and my lips moving. I'd pray in cars, especially if my mom was driving. Okay, here's a random story, guys. I gotta throw this in there. Sorry, Mom. You might want to put your prayer shawl on and weep. We went to Arby's, and they had, we went through the drive-thru. We ordered our food, and then we went to most Arby's, I think, only have one window. But they had a concrete barrier next to this line, so once you were in line, you were not getting out of line. So we order our food and pull up to the window, and my mom pays for the food and leaves. And I was like, Doris? That's not my mom's name, but I just would call her things. I'm like, you didn't get your food. So by this time, I'm like, oh, my word. And she's like, oh. So then she put the car in reverse and backed up to the window. Okay, mind you, we've already drove past once. So she backed up to the window, got the food, and the people were already looking like, okay, whatever. And then she forgot she had it in reverse, and so she backed up past the window. Well, thankfully no one was behind us, but by this time, we had already been past the window how many times, but she had to drive past it again to get out of the line. And as we go by, I'm just like, oh, my gentle Joseph mother. So these are why I would pray in cars when she was driving. Anyways, where was I? But my extreme conscientiousness was extremely frustrating because the devil would play games with me. And I can remember, this sounds really crazy, and my mom's probably over there like, I don't even know what she's doing, but I would get to the point where I would pray, and I would feel like for God to hear my prayers, I would have to say like amen 2 times at the end of my prayer or something. It was just like weird, and the devil would just play tricks on me because I wanted to serve the Lord so much, that I wanted to do everything perfectly. Like, I just have to follow all these, I just have to be perfect. And it was a very big battle in my life, and I would just be like, oh, Lord, please help me. I don't want to be weird. Ooh, well. Thanks, Lord. I eventually grew out of it, but just by knowing what God's word said, and obviously with some wise counsel from people who probably knew what I was facing or had gone through it themselves. And as a teenager, I never went through a stage of being embarrassed. Like sometimes kids, you can be kind of embarrassed for how you were raised. Like, oh yeah, my parents make me live this way, actually. And I didn't really ever feel that way. I was proud of how I was raised because I believed in what I was living. It wasn't because my parents were making me do anything, but I would explain why I lived the way I lived and, acted the way I acted. For example, one time in driver's training, I got into the car, and one of the first things the man said to me, he's like, hey, where do you go to church? So I told him, he's like, oh, that's cool, that's nice. Well, you had to be in the car back, I don't know if they still do this, but I had to be in a car with this random stranger, which sounds like a great idea, for like 2 hours as they would drive you around and do all this stuff. And during the course of this drive, he started talking to me about church and maybe about stuff that I believed, and then he was like, so why do you do what you do? What does your church do? So I explained to him, I think that a woman should look modest. I believe, all of these things, and gave him, and he's like, well, that's really great, but I don't think that's necessary, actually. I just think that sounds kind of weird or whatever, but cool if it works for you. But yeah, I definitely don't think it's necessary. And so I looked at him, I was like, just curious. I got into the car. I didn't know you, you didn't know me, but you asked me where I went to church. How did you know I went to church? And he's like, oh, you got me. I was like, yeah, I know. Anyways, that was quite the testimony. Anyways, I don't know where I am, and I'm probably jumping all over the place, but so my last 2 years in high school, my mom decided to homeschool me. She was a drill sergeant. I did 2 years and 6 months. I'm not even kidding you, and it's not because I'm smart. My mom, she would be like, literally just was like, sorry, I'm so scared. Okay, calm down, Joanne. But anyways, my mom, one day she's like, let's just get this done. Won't you feel so much better if you get this done? She made me do like 9 exams in 9 exams in 1 day. And so anyways, yeah, she was a drill sergeant. I'd like to refer to those 2 years as my military service. So, my mom was strict. My brother Rodney, I almost said may he rest in peace. He is still living, but he's probably listening. But my brother Rodney, he tells crazy stories about growing up, like stuff he did. He like joined the mafia when he was 11 and was like robbing midgets, and I'm over here like, I don't know what family he grew up in, but it was not the same house. My mom was strict. She knew. I literally got in trouble one time for leaving hairspray out on the front porch of my neighbor's house, and I'm like, Rodney, what? Anyways, I was not a rebellious kid, and the worst thing I've ever done in my life was like push the red emergency button on the escalators at IHC in Dayton. Thankfully, that's where my criminal record stopped. I then graduated, thanks to my mom, and went to Bible college for 2 years. Now, keep in mind that I had always felt like I was going to be a missionary or a pastor's wife. How does one go about becoming a pastor's wife? Wear perfume and keep walking past the ministerial department? That's exactly what I did. I'm just kidding, I did not. So, when I met Solomon, it was magical. Fireworks went off, harps were playing, cows were mooing. Actually, none of that happened. He was dating someone else. But he came to his senses and he realized he needed to get to know me better. Actually, his girlfriend broke up with him. So when we started dating, we just knew we were for each other. I'm like, I kind of like you. So we dated 3 months and then got engaged. 2 out of 5 stars, I do not recommend, okay? It worked for us, but it was crazy. So we got married on August 10th, 2007, and a year later we went and pastored our first church in Alexandria, PA. and it was called the Alexandria God's Missionary Church, and the people there were absolutely precious. And on one of our first Sundays there, Solomon had preached a message, and I was so proud of him. I'm like, I married a preacher, let me tell you. So I wanted to congratulate him on such a good message, and I rushed out after church, and I hugged him really tight, but I also picked him up and spun him around. He was not impressed at all. In fact, he was saying through clench, he's like, put me down right now. And he told me, like, you cannot do that stuff, Joanne, okay? But see, Solomon and I have really different personalities. So he's super serious a lot of the time. He's annoyingly disciplined. And he absolutely thrives on a schedule, okay? I, however, am a free spirit. For example, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, honey, we should go skydiving today. And he'll like, how about you stay home and do the laundry? Rude. So another example is like I crack myself up. Like I sometimes think things are good ideas and I don't quite think them through. That happens 99% of my life. Solomon was in our living room sitting in his leather recliner, and I thought to myself, I was like, it'd be kind of funny. He had his feet propped up, you know, the little handle on the side. I was like, I should go over there and tip him backwards. Just like all the way, like lift up the feet, because again, so I did. I tipped the whole thing over and he fell backwards, and then he was kind of like wedged in there and stuck. And I thought it was hilarious, but he did not. So, but we are so good for each other. He needs to lighten up, and I need to be mature and adult-like. We had our first baby in 2009, best day ever becoming a mom, and an absolute dream come true. And then 2 months later, on July 11th, 2009, my world changed forever when we got a frantic call from my sister-in-law who had just told my mom that my brother had drowned, or they had, pulled him out of the water, and that they were trying to, bring him back, and he drowned. And so that was a horrible experience for me. It was the first time that I had ever had someone really close to me die. And a few months after that, it was probably one of the first times I had a panic attack, which I didn't realize what a panic attack was. Fast forward, and by the way, that whole year, it was just a rough year. You just like, life is good. Everything's nice, but my brother's dead. So that was a really tough year for me. And then fast forward to me having 3 babies and 1 on the way. And it was in the month of December, I started experiencing really bad headaches and just like debilitating headaches. And I would go to the doctor and they were like, you're just having a pregnancy migraine. I'm like, okay, never had a migraine before, but whatever. And I went back, I forget how many doctors I went to, maybe 5 or 6. And finally it came to the point where one night Solomon thought I was having a stroke. So he took me to the hospital and they wanted to life flight me. And long story short, they thought I had MS, and they told me you probably have MS. And so that was extremely traumatizing to me, because here I am, a young mom, I have kids, Solomon loves being a pastor, and I'm like, I just ruined his life. So when people would come into the room, I'd be like, please pray for Solomon. And he'd be like, will you please quit telling people that? They're gonna think I'm awful. I'm like, but I feel so bad. Anyways, thankfully it wasn't MS, it was something called ADEM, and it's basically, long story short, if you think about the nerves in your brain, like they have a coating on it, my immune system attacked that, and I couldn't like walk, I couldn't talk, I couldn't feed myself, and I could talk, but I couldn't talk. So I would like sound like I was a stroke patient. And one time in the hospital, I kept talking and talking, and one of my biggest fears was that I was dying. I'm like, am I dying? And I also didn't want to be by myself. So my mom would spend the night with me in the hospital, because Solomon would go back home with the kiddos. And one night I kept talking and talking, and my mom's like, okay, Joanne, it's time to go to bed now. Time to go to sleep, sweetie. And then I kept talking, and she's like, oh, dear Jesus, just help her to shut up. And I was like, way to comfort me. But anyways, there was some positive things in that whole experience. I learned a lot. In rehab, it was awful. I mean, it was like being in a nursing home. I'm not even kidding you. They made me do fake laundry in rehab. I'm like, okay. And then also, they would ask me to do math problems do this math problem. I'm like, honey, I can't even do math when I'm like in my normal brain, okay? And they're like, count down from 73 to 20. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be in here a while. Anyways, one night I actually said in rehab, I was like feeling sorry for myself, and I was like, is this how my life is gonna be? And I had a roommate. She was this really old roommate, and I was talking to Solomon, and I was crying. I'm like, Solomon, if I have to live like this the rest of my life, I just want to die. And from the other side of the room, the old lady said, "Me too." And then I started laughing hysterically, and it just, yeah, well, anyways. I gotta hurry. I'm so sorry. I probably have already spoke like 93 minutes. Okay. Thankfully, I delivered a beautiful baby girl, Liberty Noel, after that whole incident with Aiden. But I definitely think I had something, not to make light of people who have PTSD, but I pretty much think I have it because I was always worried, oh no, this is gonna happen again. And then on January 10th, I believe it was, in 2018, my dad died of a massive heart attack. And anyway, so that was obviously quite shocking, and that rocked our world, and it changes the family dynamic when you have a parent that dies. And then in 2020, obviously the world went crazy, okay? Solomon and I both had COVID 2 times, and COVID triggered something in my neurological system, and I started having really bad anxiety and feeling like I was going to die. And for 2 years, it has been going on, or had been going on. Some days are better than others. But normal situations were almost impossible for me. I would cry and tell Solomon that I was feeling like I was gonna die, and he'd be like super supportive of me and like, "It's gonna be okay, Joanne. Now go run the sweeper." No, actually, he was pretty good. And then fast forward to last April, my mother-in-law died unexpectedly in her sleep, and so obviously we were shocked and our world was rocked again. So my point in telling you some of these incidents and moments in my life is that God is good and he does not fail. And life can be extremely fun and exciting, but life can have its moments of pain and extreme sadness too. With a personality like mine, people always assume that, oh, you just must be happy all the time, or life must just be so wonderful for you all the time. I am chatty, I am happy most of the time, but I'm not always. You know, my life isn't perfect, and I'm not always chatty, but most of the time I am. Actually, people would tell me growing up all the time, like, "Oh my word, you talk so much." So in my mind, I'm like, that's it. I am so tired of people saying you talk so much. So I was like determined, I'm not talking anymore. I'm just gonna be quiet, meek Joanne. I promise you this is the truth. I was in school, and by second period, I was physically ill. I was like, I'm gonna die if I don't talk. So it's actually, I have to, it's a physical thing, I have to talk. So, anyways, and with my personality, I'm completely different from my family, okay? So let me tell you a little bit about my family real quick. I have my older 2 brothers. My brother Rodney has his doctorate, and my brother Robert, wave your hand, Rob. Okay, he won't do it. He's working on his doctorate right now, and he's like an expertise in mental health. That comes in handy, trust me. My sister Suzanne has her bachelor's in nursing, and my sister Amy, she is currently working on her master's in nursing, and so people will be like, "So, Sister Loper, what does your daughter Joanne do?" I drive a school bus. And I started out in a short one. Anyways, it's getting bigger though. So actually, you know, they're all gonna get to sign their name like Dr. Loper or all this stuff. I'm like, I'm Joanne Schaefer, CDL. Anyways, people have probably thought I have been mental, you know? I am, but I'm always going to be. Because I kid you not, I was at a doctor's appointment recently, and I was looking at their health magazines. They never have anything good in those it was like literally about how to lower your cholesterol or something. I'm like, I have nothing else to do, okay? So I opened it up, and it was like, how to help your mental health. And it talked about bird watching. And I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm gonna be mental if that's what it takes for me. No, I'm not gonna be doing no bird watching, okay? But my personality is be who you are. Let God bring out your personality for his good. And I have stumbled many times as a Christian, but my theme, my motto is keep going, don't stop, pick yourself up. You just keep trying. If you mess up, pick yourself up, keep going, and the Lord will be faithful to you. So through everything in my life, me being tenderhearted, being extremely conscientious, me being a clown in school, or marrying a preacher, having babies, deaths, all of these things, God has been good. And one of my favorite songs, I don't know the title of it, but it talks about all my life God has been faithful. All my life he has been so, so good. And young people, I want you to cling to the hope of Jesus. He can save you and he can keep you. And one of my favorite scriptures is Jude 1:24. Now unto him that is able to keep you from falling and to present you faultless before the presence of his glory with exceeding joy. And God's word is true. He can keep you from falling, and he can present you faultless before his throne. So, in closing, I just want to share a little personal story pertaining to Christina Malloyd, because she wanted me to talk about her. Just kidding. One time, Christina, Marie Plank, and I were up front singing, and Christina, I guess her heart started racing or something. She thought she was going to pass out. And so she literally left us on the platform in the middle of a song, and I'm like, yodelee-hoo-hoo. So she left, and I'm like, what just happened? Someone asked me later, like, why did she leave? I was like, oh, she was just mad that she didn't get a solo. But actually, she really genuinely felt sick, so she had to leave. But forever, I made fun of her for that. I'm like, yeah, leave the platform, make us look stupid. So I would just, like, give her a hard time about it all the time. Until this last August, Solomon and I were the song evangelists at Penview. Anybody at Penview know what happened? I thought I was passing out on the platform, and Solomon gave like this beautiful introduction. He's like, and you know, whatever. Gave this introduction, and then I was like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to leave the platform. I think I'm gonna pass out. And I literally left the platform. So apparently, if I make fun of Christina about something, it happens to me. So I would like to take this moment to make fun of how skinny she is. Guys, let me tell you something. I'm gonna be a new woman at IHC. Live for Jesus, guys. God bless.
I'm trying to see what it says you're supposed to say after something like that. Okay, I'm gonna try and be serious here for a second. She jokes about how she was different from her family, she didn't feel like she fit in and all this stuff. I can promise you this though, her family's sitting right there and they're mighty proud of her, okay? Just because you may be different from your family, you feel like you don't fit in at times, God has something for you to do. And if any of us can speak half as good as that, we'll be all right. Speaking of IHC, come to Gatlinburg IHC to hear Sister Schaefer give the closing challenge this year. All right. That was good. All right. How many of you were here last year? All right. Well, I thought about not doing this, but then that thought quickly passed. On the count of 3, make sure the microphones are ready. On the count of 3, we are going to crack our knuckles all at the same time. Okay? On the count of 3, it's got to be quiet though. We got to hear this. So we're gonna go 3, 2, 1, then do it. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1. Wow. That never gets old. All right. Also, this is a little bit late on the announcement. I sincerely apologize for this. The children's activities are happening underneath the tent out there if you would like to go to that, if you're a child. All right. At this time, Brother Eric Susan is coming to speak for us. Lord bless him as he comes. Give him your attention and listen to what it is that God has to say through Brother Susan right now.
Well, as Brother John Mark said, how do you follow that, Sister Schaefer? And actually, I do know how to follow her because I followed her through Dunkin' drive-thru yesterday. And she put down the window and said, "I'm not paying for your food." And she said she was afraid. She thought maybe the people inside there heard her say that. But I don't think they did. Did you see what I did to you before you said that? No. We're good. Okay. I might have thumbed my nose up a little bit. It's good to be here with you this afternoon. And it's hard to believe it's already Sunday of youth convention, isn't it? It's a sad day. It's a sad day, last Sunday of youth convention. But if you think about it, Yesterday was a Saturday. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for that. Yeah. Those are my favorite kind of jokes because I'm a dad, and I like to kind of make it a career out of those things. Anyway, it is good to be with you today, and also Brother Malloyd asked me to give my testimony, and so it's kind of, I think in services like this, there's a certain group of people I'm thinking about, and that are here, and I was you one day. And I'm not like the majority of you because thankfully I see a lot of young people here who their heart's desire is to serve God. And the ones I relate with are those of you sitting on the fringes, sitting on the edges, trying to hang to the back in the services. You know, you get that knot when it's youth convention time because you know God's presence is going to be here. And you don't want to have to face that again because you're not ready to make a change in your life. And that was me. And really thinking about the messages that were here and thinking about, when they were talking about the train station, Brother Ellison talked about it 2 times, and leaving your seat, getting off, the lights and the glamour and those things drawing you away, and coming back. But I felt like in my life I can relate with a lot of you, and especially with the ones I talked about, because I really grew up in the shadow of the train station. And that's where I was. I was very familiar with the train. I knew a lot about the train. It was my life. I grew up in the Holiness Movement. I went to church basically my whole life. I knew all about it. I grew up right there, right against the train station. I wasn't even really out there far away from it. I was there, and time and again I would hear the whistle blow. And all through growing up, going to Penview, it was in many revivals where God's presence was so real. And heard the whistle blow time and again, but I didn't heed. And so I started out early in my life. I went to public school also, only for kindergarten and first grade. And like 2 weeks into first grade, I gave a kid a black eye, and his parents weren't happy. And really I was innocent in the whole thing because he kind of trailed me down. He wanted to fight with me. I walked away from him 3 times, and the 3rd time I just had enough, and I just popped the kid. You know what I mean? And I didn't get in trouble because the teacher saw what happened, and on and on. It was a different day back then. Anyway, I was thinking about it. I'm not that old. I mean, I don't feel very old. I feel half my age, but I'm not very old. But it was a different day back then anyway. I remember at public school where the 5th and 6th grade teacher had a belt hanging on the chalkboard. And he used it, in public school. The teachers would go in the furnace room right off the side of the hallway, and they would smoke in there. That's where they smoked at, right inside the school, right off the hallway. What a different day we live in these days. But anyway, that altercation with the young man proved to be a turning point in my life, even at that young age in first grade, because after that, there was a lot going on. His parents were upset and those things. And I remember my mom coming into my room, and maybe I was even expelled from school. I don't know, because I was at home for some reason during the day. And so the details are kind of, so maybe I did get in trouble. Who knows? My memory's not always the greatest, right, honey? I remember my mom coming to my room and said, "Hey, how would you like to go to school where your cousin goes to school? How would you like to go to Penview?" And I said, "Yeah, I would like that." And like I said, I was only like 2 weeks into school when Penview started, 2 weeks after public school. And so first grade, I came into Penview, and I went all the way through Penview to my senior year. And so we'll just fast forward all the way through there. And I always knew the right way. I knew I was not rebellious towards the Christian way. I knew it was the right way. I knew it was a good way. I knew the good people. I had a grandmother that prayed for me all the time, prayed for her family. I had good godly people in my life. And I knew it was the right way. I didn't mock Christianity. There was nothing about that. It was part of what I was growing up and what I was used to. But I wasn't ready in my own life to make that commitment. And so on through school, I went many times to revivals that I already mentioned, and just not willing to turn my life over to God. And I remember different times God's presence would be there so clearly, and Brother Zeckman would come right down the row, and he'd be putting his arm around us boys and inviting us to go to the altar. And time and again, I would grip the back of the seat, and almost to shaking, and just would never surrender and go to the altar. And I was just, I don't know why. I don't know why I didn't make a move, but I'm speaking to those, you know who you are here today and maybe throughout the convention, and it seems like every time we have something like this, there's always those, and I can relate with you because I remember being there. And not necessarily just trying to be rebellious and turn your back on the church, used to living in it, but not really making the decision to follow after God. And in around that time of my life, this new girl came to school, and named Jillian, and she came to school, and I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to her, I don't think. Matter of fact, one of my friends who was a girl, not a girlfriend, a friend who was a girl, she handed me this list one day. It was probably in study hall, and a list of girls, and she's like, number these 1 to 10 on your preference, you know? So I put my now wife, I think, at like number 3, you know, or maybe 4. And I handed her the list back, and the girl leans over and says, I don't think Jill would like that if she saw that. And I was like, are you serious? Like, the reason I didn't put her at the top, because she was like out of my league, you know what I mean? Like, she was getting good grades and all those things, and I just didn't care about grades. I didn't care about those things whatsoever, and she just seemed like kind of removed from me in that way. But when I realized that maybe there was some interest there, I was interested immediately. And so we started talking, hanging out, and eventually became a couple. And we hear the Durst year after year talk, and they say, don't do what we did. Don't follow the exact thing that we did, because being unequally yoked and all the things that they worked through. But really, I was someone who knew the right way, wasn't interested. My wife, my then girlfriend, was always interested in serving God. It's what she wanted to do. It was her heart's desire. And so it posed a problem. And I can't explain to you all the ins and outs of it, but God used her in such a mighty way as an anchor point to keep me from going far out into sin, because I was up for anything. I was willing to go try anything, do anything, and I was starting to do those things. And I remember very specifically one day coming back to school, and I told her something that I had done over the weekend and been involved in, and she started to cry. And I can tell you that was the last time. That was the last time. And even though I wasn't serving God, that just stopped me in my tracks right there. And completely, I had no interest, although opportunity was always there because of the friends that I hung out with. My friends weren't always the best. And Brother Ellison talked about his friends. And I was hoping he would say one of the phrases that his dad used to say to him, but he didn't. So I'll tell you what it was. He would say, Matt, you're never going to fly with the eagles when you're running with the turkeys. And it was very interesting to me. It stuck with me. I've heard him say it before. But anyway, that was my problem. But when I seen Jill crying, it stopped me in my tracks. And it really God started working on me through her. And to the point where in 11th grade, during a revival, after I'd been through so many revivals, and if you were at Penview through those years that I was there, you can remember some just powerful revivals where God's presence came just as I maybe have not seen hardly ever since, and God was there, but still I made a move. And I remember this particular revival where I was there. God was dealing with my heart, and no one had to ask me to go, and I was actually asking someone else to go. Eric Coons, a lot of you know him. We grew up together, went to school together. He was my classmate. He was sitting beside me, and I think I bumped him on the leg or something. I said, will you go pray with me? And he said, yeah, and we went up to the altar, and I prayed, and God saved me. And I wish I could say that I stayed true from that point, but I'm one of those people who I'm one of those people that Brother Spivey can't stand. I'm one of those doubting Thomases. I'm one of those ones where the devil likes to make a playground out of my mind. And it's young people, it's hard. I know it's hard. I've been there. I've been down that road in my lifetime, and it just very early on, hardly into my relationship with God, I just doubted that it happened for me, and I knew it would happen for other people and all those things, but it was just, I found myself through doubt and then also peer pressure and things like that, just walking away. And my life continued to progress on through school and those things, and my wife and I continued, my girlfriend then, we went through a time and started progressing in our relationship then, I think, but it was kind of those, the things of God weren't really mentioned or talked about, and there was just a time in our life where we kind of floated along through those things, and sometimes you look back and wonder what was, really going on through all those times, but God was being faithful nonetheless, and we ended up getting married and starting a family, and going through all of those things, and raising kids. And I just was not, again, still not interested in serving God. And really, early on when we started in our married life, we were attending Beavertown here, over there in the other church, off and on, in the mornings, and in the evenings, not so much. And a friend of ours that we hung out with, they were at our house one time. They went to New Columbia God's Missionary Church, and they said, hey, you should come up and visit our church, because we were really attending church just sporadically. And they said, you should come visit our church sometime. And so we went there to visit, and I think I can say pretty sure that we never missed again. We went to visit that one time, and we just never left. And we just loved it, and God used it in a mighty way. And so we started attending the church there, and Brother Ellison was the pastor, and really befriended me, spent a lot of time with me, invested a lot of time in me, in friendship. And also Brother Steve Miller was also there at the church as associate pastor. And both of them took an interest in me, spent a lot of time with me, and on we went, our merry way kind of at church. We loved our church. We were there doing different things and that, but God still was hunting me down. And I remember getting to a point in my life where, even after I got married, I'm not going to talk about I'm not going to talk about any of those things, but there was things in my life that were really, if they would have continued to progress, would have destroyed my family's life. And when I think back over my life, I'm thankful that God got a hold of me when he did. And because I'm privileged to have a wonderful family and wonderful children who have a desire to serve God and are way further up the road than I was at their age. I had no interest at their age, and here they are serving God. But it's because of God's faithfulness to me at the perfect time where he reached down. And I walked away. As I said, so many times I had opportunity, but he continued to follow after me. And we're there at the church, and there was things going on in my life, and it all came together at the right time. God knew when we got there. These people became friends with us, and for the first time really in my life, this church made me feel like I was missing something, like I was on the outside looking in on something wonderful and something that I wanted to have. I wanted the life that they have. I wanted that, and it really started to work on me. And was also mentioned earlier today, you don't have to get yourself straightened out. Too many people think they have to get themselves straightened out before they come back to God, and I'm afraid sometimes if we're not careful, hopefully none of us are this way, but I know there's people this way, that they try to line people up and tell them what they need to do instead of just leading them to Jesus. And but on my own, no one telling me anything before I got saved, I just started dropping some things off. I stopped listening to music that I listened to. I started cleaning up my life until the point where I was living the best life I could live, really, leading up to getting saved. And I know at this point, my wife carried a great burden for me. And I remember going to revival one night. We're on our way to revival, and we were driving along in the car. She was driving. I don't know why. She does sometimes. And I remember she started crying. We were coming into Lewisburg. She started crying. And she says, I don't know why you don't just give your life to God. She's like, sometimes I think you live a better life than I do. And it wasn't that she lived a bad life. She was serving God. But I had my life kind of just so shaped up to that point where I was just doing the right things, but I wasn't surrendering my heart. I wasn't willing to let him come in and save me. And so we went into this revival. It was a very strange revival. It was I think if I remember correctly, the evangelist was late. I think actually Brother Plank came over and filled in until he got there. When he did get there, he was sick. He was sick to the point where he had to run off the platform and out the side door at one point. And the night that I got saved, I don't remember anything that he talked about. I have no idea what he talked about. But I just remember walking out, coming down to the altar, and giving my heart to God. And again, I know I skipped past some parts. I'm going to back up because it's important. So leading up to that point, God was starting to make changes in my life. And I was at Steve Miller's house, and he'd bought a house there locally. Like I said, he was associate pastor, and I was helping him do some work in his house. He was remodeling this house, and we were working. And he asked me, he's like, so Eric, he asked me about my soul. And it was really a turning point in my life because, I knew I wasn't saved. I knew they knew that also. But it hadn't been voiced. It hadn't been put out there. You understand what I'm saying? And so when that happened, when that was put out there, it created almost a kind of accountability on my part where I really started making progress toward God, because now I knew it was out in the open air. And it was something that was discussed. It was something that was known. And now it was something that was more of a motivator to me. And so I would encourage you, young people, if you're at that place in your life where you know that people know you're not serving God, and you know it also, I encourage you, go talk to somebody and just let it out. Say, you know what, I need to be saved. And it is going to be a huge help and a motivator to you to continue to guide you in the right direction. And I believe that. And when he said that, later on we were at Mount of Blessings camp in the service, and I was sitting back. My wife was at the altar praying with somebody, and I was sitting back in the seat, and I had my two little boys sitting beside me, and I was holding my daughter, and she was just a baby. And Brother Fulton was the evangelist, and he came back to me, and he talked to me, invited me to the altar, and really challenged me and addressed the family situation. He said, you have two little boys here and a little girl, and you should be serious about serving God. And again, another turning point in my life. And at the altar, during the close of that, Brother Ellison was also the president of Mount of Blessings Camp, and he stood up and he did the thing, everyone close your eyes, raise your hand if you didn't come up and pray, but you need prayer and things like that. And for the first time ever in my life, I raised my hand. And I heard his voice catch, and I knew he saw me. And so there was another connection there, and that led up to that day where I came and knelt at the altar because my two pastors knew, and it was out in the open, and it was an issue I needed dealt with, and it was a real motivator to me. And I remember coming up, kneeling at the altar, and God saved me. But I remember leaving that night and going back home, and again, the devil was trying to come with doubt in my mind immediately. And I remember laying in bed that night, my wife and I were talking about it, and I remember her saying, listen, you're saved. And about that time, the witness of the Spirit came, and he just settled in and left me know that I was a child of his. And I remember that time and how clear it was. And I said I grew up in the church, and I did. I grew up around the holiness movement my whole life, and but yet I was green as green could be as a Christian. And it's incredible how that can be, because I think in so many ways we get in our mind what Christianity looks like or what we've seen. And if some of us grown up, I was maybe at the tail end of that era, but there was some interesting things taught from the pulpit. And so we were maybe confused about. Matter of fact, when I became a Christian, there were some things that I was surprised God didn't require of me. And I thought that those were Christian things, and because of some of the things you heard growing up. And you know what I'm talking about. But becoming a Christian I was just green. It was so new to me, even though I'd seen it done my whole life. The Bible was like a brand new book to me. It was like when I read it, it was like something I'd never read before. It was just so interesting. It just spoke to me, and just the way God led me was incredible, because like I said, it seemed like on the outside I had so many things shaped up that there wasn't a whole lot to change about me, but God changed me completely, and he changed me entirely in ways that I could never imagine. So I remember during that time, Brother Ellison came to me, and he gave me, I need to hurry, he gave me a book called Holiness in High Country, devotional book. And I kind of glanced at it. It didn't really speak to me at all or anything like that, and I kind of put it aside. And about exactly a year later, by the way, I got saved on November the 1st on Brother Ellison's birthday. And so it's easy for me to remember. But anyway, he gave me this book. About a year later, I was reading in Isaiah chapter 6. And if you know the story, how Isaiah is there, this is a man of God, but when the presence of God came, he said, woe is me. And that story just stood out to me because, we know that the Holy Spirit came at Pentecost, right? And I'm reading this story, and it just seemed like a Holy Spirit dealing with Isaiah, because this is already a man of God, but he says, "Woe is me," you know. And he felt his uncleanness. And when the coal was taken from the altar and placed on his lips, it said, "Your sin," singular, has been cleansed. And then after that, he volunteered to go and do God's will. We know the passage. And I was just kind of confused by this, because I thought, this almost seems like he's having an infilling of the Spirit here. And I remember calling Brother Ellison and questioning him about this, and we talked about it and stuff. And he said, I think God's trying to lead you into sanctification. And, I wasn't really, this wasn't even on the radar. It's not something I was seeking. But it was something that God was putting in my lap. And so I remember from that point forward, I was seeking God for sanctification. I remember one evening in particular, I was back in the bedroom. I was laying flat out on the floor, just seeking God, crying out to Him for cleansing power, for sanctification. And I remember getting up, walking out to the kitchen, and my wife had baked cake or something. And if you know my wife, there's always baked goods on the counter. It's just something she does and something she enjoys to do, and there's always something there. And I went out, cut a piece of cake, and I remember it sitting on the plate, and I just knew as clear as could be that I wasn't done praying yet. And I turned around and walked away from there and walked back into my bedroom, got down again, and just started seeking God until I knew that I was done praying. And I remember getting up, and I'm walking out the hallway, and Jill was there in the living room, and I remember going up and hugging her, and I said, I think I just got sanctified. And which is a great thing, right? But I said, I think. And that was the wrong thing to say at that moment for someone like me. Because from that time on, the devil leveraged that. As I said already before in my life, that's one of the areas that the devil wants to leverage, and he leveraged that. And tried to get me to doubt in those things, and doubt I did. And God was so faithful to me. I remember one day I was reading Scripture, and when Peter was walking on the water, but when he began to sink, and Jesus said, "Wherefore didst thou doubt?" And when I read that phrase, it was like he was just speaking directly to me. And but still, I continued on and doubted, and through the doubt, really, I believe, lost out on my sanctification experience. And because I just took it back off the altar, I took myself off of there because I was doubting God and the work that He had done. And but God was continually faithful to me. And so moving on in my life, I was going through a time. I worked different jobs. I ended up getting a job at a coal mine. I was there for 10 and a half years. And coming into the end of that in 2013, the mine was closing down. And so we ended up getting out of there what we could get out of there, move equipment out from under the ground, all those things, and they sealed the tunnel, and it was gone. And so I ended up moving on, and I was in a time of transition. I was laid off for 7 months, and it was in some ways, and maybe in several ways, a friction time with my wife and I. And just for different reasons, and I understood, but we didn't understand each other through that time because I didn't have a job, and she needed stability. And husbands and wives, they like stability. They like something that they can hold on to. And so sometimes in transition periods like that, it can be hard. And it was a hard time. And I remember going to many job interviews and things like that. And so finally, I just thought, you know what? I'm somewhat mechanical. Maybe I'll go to school and learn diesel mechanics, and I'll get a job in the diesel field. So, you just see God working all along the way with different places. There were places that wanted to hire me right away, and I didn't go to those places for different various reasons, and just the way God worked through all of that. But I ended up signing up for school. I was going to go take classes, and I was going to become a diesel mechanic. That's what I was going to do. And I went, took a pre-test, all those things, was accepted, and time was winding down. And my wife was happy because now we had direction. At least we knew what we were going to do. We weren't flying around by the seat of our pants because that's a pet peeve of hers. She likes to know some things, and structure. And it represented direction. And so we were good. We were cruising. And this class was going to start right first week in September. And so we go off to Penns Creek Camp. We're at Penns Creek Camp in August, or the beginning of August. And Brother Dan Stetler was there. And I don't remember exactly what he was preaching about. But I remember where I was sitting over here, and while he was preaching, I just felt God speak to me and say, I don't want your money. And I kind of knew exactly what that meant. In some ways, it meant, you're not to pursue a career. I don't want your money. That's not what I'm interested in. I want you. And I didn't know all the meaning to that at that point. I just didn't really understand that, but I knew very clearly that school was out. And we had an interesting conversation in the van. I said, well, hon, God doesn't want me to go to school. And what? I feel very clearly, God spoke to me and said, I don't want your money. And I'm not supposed to go to school. And so I called down there and to cancel. And the lady's like, if you don't mind my asking, why are you canceling last minute? And I said, well, I told her, I feel like it's what God wants me to do. And she got kind of awkward and quiet, and then the conversation was over. So there I am, no direction, no job, still praying about a job and those things, and eventually God led me to the place where I work now. And obviously, when you do a job transition, you can't expect just to walk into another job making the same amount of money you left, because you had time in there and things like that. As a matter of fact, there were some other jobs that had opportunity, but the pay wasn't right. But honestly, what's interesting to me was by the time I got a job, I didn't care, because I thought, you know what, I'm not going to make what I was making. So if it would have been, the job would have came along at a different time, I would have taken it. But God was just directing in different ways. And finally, he found me a job. And my wife tricked me, by the way, because she was trying to help me out and finding jobs. So she's online just putting my resume out there everywhere. And she's like, hey, there's this job. You have a job interview over here at this place. And so I went to the job interview. I go in, sit down, and it's a plant maintenance supervisor. And I'm like, hon, do you know what that job interview is for? When I get home, she's like, yeah, I know. She's like, you got this? I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I had no idea what I was even getting into. I just thought it was a maintenance position. Well, long story short, I got the job, started out making more money there than I did where a job I left. And it just seemed like God was looking out for us. But again, God had told me, I don't want your money. And I never forgot that. But I started working there, and God started working in our lives. I got to wrap this up very quickly. But we ended up moving closer to the church, and long story short, we came into a pastoral change, which you know, Brother Ellison now is at Hope Sound. And Brother Loper, I gave him a little shock back here in the vestibule. He didn't really know who I was. It was a couple years ago. And I walked up, Brother Rodney Loper, and I shook his hand, and I said, hey, I would just like to personally thank you for recommending my pastor to take your job down at Hope Sound. And his face I don't think he knew what to do. And I said, I'm only kidding. But anyway, so the Ellisons were leaving our church, and I was losing a pastor, a mentor, and a friend. And there's so much in between there where he mentored me, and he's the type of mentor that just tells you what you're going to do. If you've ever been around him, like he said, what I think you need to do, Eric, is you need to get in the youth class. That's what you need to do. And, maybe, I don't know. Yeah, that's what you're going to do. That's your next step. One time we used to do, COVID closed all this down, but we used to do once a month, we did a service with older people at a high-rise in Lewisburg, and he would go there one afternoon a month, and I would go there with him just to go along because I was kind of interested and stuff. And one Sunday morning, he's like, I'm not as prepared for tonight as I'd like to be. I'd like to spend a little more time for the message. Could you go and do the afternoon service for me over at Heritage House? I said, yeah, I'll do it. And which God had already prepared my mind for this, because when I was sitting in the morning service, I thought, it was like God impressed me that he was going to ask me that. So I already had been known that was coming. And so I went and did the service, and guess what? Next time rolls around, he's like, oh, by the way, he's like, that's yours now. You're the guy now. That's your job. And which is what I needed. I'm the type of person that needs that push, and he's good at pushing. So anyway, so I was losing a pastor, a mentor, and a friend, and if you've ever gone through something like that, it really shakes up your life. And so I was in a time up in my bedroom just praying about the situation, praying about the pastor's situation, all those things going on in our life. And while I was praying about all those things that had nothing to do with anything else but those things, God said, I want you to start taking classes. Just clear. One of the clearest ways God has ever spoken to me, he said, I want you to start taking classes. And I was like, okay, Lord. I didn't know necessarily what that meant. And I knew it was Bible classes, but I went down, and I knew it was of the Lord because I went down and said to my wife, I said, I feel like God wants me to take classes. She said, okay. I was like, it's God's will. It's got to be. So Brother Ellison was still there. He was still with us, and he came over, and I wanted to talk to him about it. And of course, when I said, what classes do you think I should take? Will be helpful to me in ministering to the youth here at the church. He's like, well, if you're going to take classes, you got to get your degree. You got to go all the way. You're not just going to take a couple classes. And as he was telling me that, God was speaking to my heart also and saying, this is what I want you to do. And so I ended up taking classes through Hope Sound Online, still doing that. And as I ventured out into that and started taking classes, God made it very clear to me that he was calling me into full-time ministry. And I still work full-time. So I'm not out in full-time ministry yet, but that's the plan, that's the goal, and that's what I feel like God has for my life, and he made that clear to me. But God led me through all of that, and while taking classes through Hope Sound Online, I was taking, slipping my mind now, holiness class. Anyway, reading the Holy Way and going through the book and stuff, and God started to deal with me again about sanctification in my heart. And through that class and through a few days of just consecration to God, and it was such a sweet, it wasn't turmoil, it was just a sweet peace of walking with God because I knew he was going to answer me. And day after day, and finally one day up in my bedroom, God just spoke so clearly again, another very clear time in my life, and said, you've surrendered everything you need to surrender. You've done your part. And so then, I said, okay, Lord, thank you for that. And now to know the work is done, Lord, I need a sign. So I want my wife to come up the steps. When she gets home from bringing the kids home from school, I want her to come up the steps. That'll be a sign, because usually she goes right into the kitchen. Come up the steps, and I'll tell her what you've done for me. I need that sign. And God said, no, you're going to trust me without a sign. You're going to trust me no matter what. You don't need that sign. You think you do, but you don't. You're going to trust me regardless. And I said, Lord, I do. I do trust you regardless. And I thanked the Lord, and she ended up coming up later, but I'd already taken care of that with God, and I let her know what God had done in my life. But God's been so faithful to me time and again, and there's so many more things I could have talked about. I'm running over time. But I just want to say real quickly, because it's a burden in my heart for young people and young couples and young parents and parents in general. It's important that we establish our lives in God. It's important, young people and young couples. Too many young couples we see getting together in this day, and it's a vulnerable time of your life, and there's a great temptation to be drawn away and to go a different direction. We see it a lot in the day that we live in. And even I remember in our first years of marriage, some of the decisions we made that impacted our lives later. And it's just important to find God before you get married, and then you can start out established in your life. But young people, I want to say very quickly, because it's on my heart, and it's very important. We talk a lot about those that are called to ministry, and I'm kind of the guy that has a foot on both sides of the line, as far as being a layperson in the church and also from a ministry standpoint. And we focus a lot on those that are called to do mission work, evangelists and pastors, and we need them. And it's a very important and high calling of God. But I want to tell you that if you don't have that call, you still have a specific call to ministry as a layperson in the church. And it's important to me, because the pastor can go and he can speak and do all that he can do, but if the church is going to be full of people, the sinners are going to come in from the community, it's going to be because of you rubbing shoulders with them at work. And whenever you go out into your lifetime and you're searching for a job, and maybe God says, I want you to be a layperson. I haven't laid a specific calling upon your life to go out into full-time ministry, but you should face every job that you have in your life with the same fervency and prayer as a pastor praying about going to a new charge, going to a new church. That should be how you should pray. Because I realize it more so now in my life than I ever have, where the place that I work at, I'm there until God releases me. He has clearly led me there, and it's been a place of ministry as a layperson to, many stories of reaching out to people there, the most hardened people at the job place, waving you over and asking you to pray for them in a specific way in their life, or different things like that. And that's the importance of a layperson. Spirit-filled lay people are needed in the church. Because you might not be called to be a great missionary, evangelist, or pastor, but you might be the one that finds that next great missionary, evangelist, or pastor. That might be someone that you lead to God. And just as those that went before me and led me, I was thinking about it, all that Brother Ellison had done in my life, reaching out to me. And I just did a little backtrailing today because I've heard it time and again, but I've heard different times him mention Brother Plank. Brother Jim Plank playing a key role in his life and to where he is today, because Matt also was troubled in his early Christian years and going through all what we heard of his story isn't everything, but through his life, Brother Plank took an interest in him and guiding him and leading him, which had an effect in my life. And then going back even beyond that, I asked Brother Plank this morning, I said, Brother Plank, you grew up in Spring Garden Church, which is now New Columbia Church, where I attend. You grew up in that church. Were there lay people in that church that were key in leading you to God? And he said, absolutely. And he started naming some ladies that spent time in prayer and really impacted his life for God. He said, if it wasn't for those people, the lay people in that church, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And because those lay people were faithful to Brother Plank, and he was faithful to Matt, and Matt was faithful to me, I'm now their youth pastor. And they would have never known that they would come full circle like that. They would have never known. They don't know who I am. Those ladies that have been praying and gone on before don't know that I'm ministering at their church now, unless they're looking down from heaven. But you never know who you're going to impact young people. Give your life to God. And even if God is calling you only, in quotations, to be a lay person, be a spirit-filled lay person, you're very important to the ministry. Not just with your money, with who you are in the workplace is of utmost importance. And be all that God has for you to be. And go out and serve the Lord joyfully. It's a great privilege to serve Him.
Amen. Thank you, Brother Susan. 100% agree with what he had to say. All right. How many of you typically take Sunday afternoon naps? All right. So you're struggling right now, maybe? Let me help. Are we awake? Let's try this one. Just wanted to cause some anxiety for people. All right, hopefully now you're ready to go. Stand up. I know Brother Durst isn't out here to do this, but let's do the exercises that Brother Durst used to do. Do this. All right, ready? Exercise, exercise. Watch me do my exercise. All right, you may be seated. Hopefully Brother Durst will forgive me for taking that exercise from him. All right, Brother Cade Davis, the assistant/associate pastor at Millmont God's Missionary Church, is coming to speak for us at this time. Lord bless Cade Davis as he comes to speak.
Good afternoon. I was going to wake you up myself, but John Mark stole my opening. But I don't have much time because Eric Susan took my time, so maybe I should just turn it over to the Dursts. But I too was tasked with telling my life story. It's bright. And so I'm just going to get right into that. I'm going to start, give you a little background of where I came from. I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up in a pastor's home. I had some of the best parents you could ask for. Still have. They are still living. They prayed with me. They prayed for me. They loved me. They showed me a good way to walk, and I'm so thankful for that. And because of that, at a young age, I always had a desire to serve God. I always wanted to do His will for my life. I wanted to follow His will. And I remember multiple times, as some of you probably can identify with, going to the altar over and over again as a kid. And one of the main things, and this is kind of the main thing I want to talk about a little bit through this short time, is the main thing I struggled with probably as a kid into my teen years, and it blossomed into other things, and that was anger. I struggled with anger. I was a very angry kid, angry teenager, and because of that, into my teenage years, it turned into bitterness and hate and different things like that. And I'm a youngest as well. Like Ben Smith said, he's a youngest. And I'm a youngest as well, and I have 3 older siblings, 2 older brothers. and an older sister. And my brother right above me is 2 years older than me, and about everybody in the Davis household is of significant size. And so 2 years makes a big difference when you're a kid. And my brother would pick on me, and he would instigate and make me angry. And I couldn't do anything about it. But I remember this story, and I want Kyle Markle to make his way up here. Everybody love Kyle. Yeah. So I remember this kind of stuff, this anger that would happen in my life, and I was probably 8, 9 years old, and so I wanted, anybody visual learners? Quite a few. I wanted you to see the size I was when I was 8 years old. Okay. Okay, you can imagine a pillow in there too. I'll give him that. Thank you, Kyle. You can sit down. But I remember at that age struggling with anger, and I don't know if I thought I was the Incredible Hulk, but I learned something at my little age that I could never whoop my brother, but I could always get in one good shot. One good shot. And so he would make me mad, and I would squat down, and I would flex as much as I could. I was as wide as I was tall. And I would charge to get that good hit. And they quickly named me the Incredible Bulk instead of the Incredible Hulk. So that kind of lost its effect. But I was very angry. I also remember another story. My brother, once again, Kirk, he was instigating me and got me angry. And I grabbed the quickest thing I could find, and it was like a 5-pound thing of dog food. And he said something smart to me and turned his back. And I grabbed that sucker and woof! It was not good. Hit him in the back, and he went down, and I thought I got my one good shot until I got plenty good shots on my hindquarters. I also remember the times going into my teen years, still struggling with anger, and I would play ping pong, and I hated to lose. And the people I played against knew that, and they'd beat me, and they'd gloat a little bit. Well, ping pong paddles fly very well, in case you're wondering. And I think Nathan Black is probably the world's best ping pong paddle dodger. He's still here today. But I remember those times, the anger, the things that I struggled with. And going into my teen years, the anger, as I said, it started turning into hatred and bitterness. I was rebellious. I didn't want to do what God wanted me to do. I didn't want to give my life to Him. I wanted to live my own life. And I was a pastor's kid, like I said, and most people probably didn't know that. Some people did, those that were close to me. But in my heart, that's how I felt. I knew what to say to get people off my back. I knew how to testify. Ben Smith said those three key testimonies. Yeah, I used every one of those. But I remember all that. But I also remember a turning point in my life. I was probably 16 years old, right around that mark. And I felt like I was at a crossroads. And I had to make that decision, whether I was going to let that anger and that bitterness and that hatred take me on the path. And who knows where it would have taken me if I was going to surrender my life to God. And I'm so thankful that I did surrender my life to God. His grace reached me where I was, and He changed my life, and He changed my course, my trajectory. And a few months later, after I decided to surrender my life to God, to accept the gift of salvation, I was here at CPYC, 16 years old, and right over here in this area, I settled the call to preach. And that's nothing that I could have done. But it was God's grace and reaching into my life that changed the path. I got saved. I accepted the call to preach. I went to Bible school at the age of 17. And I remember even in that time, after getting saved and trying to do my best to serve God, those that were close to me, I have a good friend named Royal Brantley. He knew how to push my buttons, and he still does. And that anger would spring up. And I didn't like that. And I remember it was about my junior year of college. We were in a revival. Pastor Solomon Schaefer and President Matt Malloyd, they were preaching that together. Well, not at the same time, but different. Yeah, they would take a night, then another night. You know how that works. They were preaching that, and there was a lot of talk about sanctification and surrendering your life completely to God. And I remember God was speaking to me a lot through that revival, and he was working on me, and he was helping me to get things settled. And I came to the end of myself, and I said I was tired of trying to do things my own way, tired of trying to serve him my own way. And I knelt at the altar, and I can't say I jumped up for joy like some people do, but I just knew that the work was done, that the peace is unexplainable that flooded my heart, and I'm just so thankful for that. And young people, you'll never be sorry when you surrender your life completely to God. And it's amazing to think about that. The path that I was on of anger and hate and bitterness, and I struggled with multiple other things, but thinking of that and where that could have taken me, where I could have been. You hear of instances where people react out of anger, and in a moment's notice, their life is a wreck. But God's grace reached me where I was, and He changed my path, and He changed my trajectory. And this afternoon, this has been really simple, really short snippet of my life, but I don't know what each one of you face. We all face different things. Some of you may face that anger, other temptations, addictions, whatever it may be. But I encourage you this afternoon, and I plead with you, give it to God. Allow His grace and His love to fill your life and change your life and to transform you. God's still in the business of saving lives and transforming lives. So I encourage you tonight, allow Him to lead your life, allow His grace to change you, and watch the trajectory of your life change. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, Brother Cade. It was very well done. All right, our last speakers of the day, you know them, you love them, they've been here before, they are no strangers to Youth Convention. Please make welcome, all the way from Talladega, Alabama, Brother and Sister Durst.
Don't say anything embarrassing this year. He makes no promises. How's everybody doing? I'm so tired. Well, listen. Just wake up. It's fine. You can sleep when you're dead. That's right. You are so quiet.
I'm just trying.
He gets so nervous. Like, I don't understand why I'm the one that should be nervous.
Well,
You say crazy things.
how many preachers here come to the pulpit with their wives?
Well, I've not seen a one.
Yeah, well,
There's a reason.
here we go.
I think you should have had Solomon. Where'd she go?
Yeah, she should have had Solomon up here.
That would've been
Just have him
hilarious.
stand here while she was talking.
This is great. Well, so we are here because we love to be here, number one. So we're
Amen.
so excited. We love Youth Convention. It's been great. Through how many years have we been coming?
I was trying to figure that out. The
We-
first
we
year
don't
that we
have any
came,
idea.
it was the Western theme. Anybody remember that? Okay,
I don't.
all right. And then, yeah, we've been coming ever since then.
Yeah, our kids were small, and now they're
We
less
have-
small.
We have a teenager now.
We
We're-
do. There she is. Hi, Ada.
Hi, baby.
Hi. She
All
said,
right.
"Oh, I'm going to listen to you guys talk."
She said, actually, she said, I love to hear you speak.
We're like,
Well, maybe in church.
she doesn't listen any other time.
Yeah, no,
just
she's
like
pretty.
her dad. No, I'm just kidding. No, she's a great kid.
You are dismissed. Have a great day. All right, let's get started.
They asked us to come again.
Yes.
This year we're going to just tell our story. Brother President Malloyd said, "Hey, why don't you guys just tell your testimony?"
He said it's been long enough.
It's been long
It's
enough.
been 6 or 7 years, and
which is hard to believe.
yep. And he said there's enough teenagers here that have not heard it. So our very first, we're actually using the notes from our very first session.
Are we?
I think so.
Well, I don't know about that.
So
Well, we have to.
we're going to roll the clock back.
Rolling the clock back.
All right.
This is why. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. So we have a disclaimer.
Disclaimer.
Disclaimer. It's very important that you hear this because we do get asked this question from time to time. But we want you to understand, and this is the case, I think, with a lot of testimonies. We are telling our
Story.
story. This is not your story. This is no one's story but ours. Meaning, it's not replicatable. In fact, the things that, and the situations that we found ourselves in when we met would not be what we would want for any of you.
Right.
And it would not be what we would want for our own children. In fact, we actively discourage our children from doing what we did. We don't want this. However, what it is it is a testimony to God's amazing grace.
Mercy.
And his mercy and his faithfulness.
And his humor.
And his humor. Because he likes to laugh at us. So anyway, we're going to begin by a verse.
Right.
And that kind of sort of ties everything together.
Colossians chapter 1, and we're looking at verse 21, 22, and 23. And you that were sometime alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now hath he reconciled in one body of his flesh through death to present you holy, amen, unblameable and unreprovable in his sight. And then I like this. If you continue in the faith, grounded and settled, and be not moved away from the hope of the gospel. Amen. That's good stuff.
It is. And so we picked that verse because it's kind of been a cornerstone of my walk, and it illustrates our 3 points very nicely.
Our 3 points. Let's give them to them.
Number 1.
Anyone.
Number 2.
Anyway.
No.
Oh,
say
no.
it right.
No. Anyway.
Anyway.
And number
3.
3? Where's that? Anytime.
Anytime. So what that means is that God saves anyone any way that he can, anytime they let him.
Yes.
So, a little bit about my background. So, those of you that do not know, I was not raised in church. I was not raised in a holiness family. I was just raised in a family. They were just a family, good people. But I did not have any sort of idea about God. I didn't know who God was. We just did not go to church. And I can remember when I was maybe like 7 or 8 years old, and I remember, and this would happen periodically, I remember being a little kid and like wanting something to happen. I mean, nothing even important. One time I very much remember not wanting to get in trouble because I had done something. I don't even remember what I did, but I can remember even as a young child, I would sit in my bed and I would just say, oh, please, please, please let, X, Y, or Z happen. I had no idea why I would find myself as a 7 or 8 year old child calling out to something. And the only thing that I can think of is that God designs each of us that even when we don't know him, and I can tell you as a 7, 8 year old girl, I had no idea who God was. But yet, there I was, a little kid in my room, just calling out for someone, for something to intervene and to do something, right? So then later on, I would be in high school, and I grew up in a small town, teeny tiny little town. And if you've grown up in a teeny tiny little town, you know that there's not much to do. You can either get in a whole lot of trouble, or you can go to church. That's it. And so I opted at that time to like go to the First Christian Church. Like some of my friends from high school went there. And I can remember they would have these like retreats. And I would go. And when I tell you there was like nothing, there's like no connection going on between like I was not thinking about God at all. There was no connection, zero. But years later, I found a box of notes that when I was at one of these retreats one time, they would have members of the congregation write notes to the kids that were coming, saying encouraging things, telling them about Jesus, praying for them. And I found this box of notes from back when I was like 15 or 16 years old that had talked about people who had been praying for me. And the same thing when I was in college, same thing happened. A situation, I was at a retreat, same kind of thing. So even as a completely unchurched person, not involved in anything at all, not even aware of it, here was God faithful to me throughout my entire life. I mean, can you even, how amazing is that?
Amen.
That God is just calling people who have people who have no background. God is faithful to them. He was faithful to me. He was calling me even when I was teeny tiny. He calls us all. So I went off to college. I went to the University of Illinois. And by the time I was 18, I was actually very against religion. I don't know why. I mean, I do know why. It was the cool thing to do.
Sure.
It was hip.
Yeah.
You were not going to get me into church. And you know what? It's still cool. They're still like, I don't need God. I mean, just look at anyway, I won't go down that path. But, I mean, it's really hip and cool to, like, not go to church or, like, to go to, like, the cool church or to, like, do all these things. It's really annoying. But I was 19 years old, and I remember at one point I was sitting on the quad.
A quad is a section of grass in between university campus buildings.
Yes, and so lots of things are going on the quad, and these sweet little people. I mean, they weren't little people; they were normal-sized people, but little people. They were wearing these shirts. And they said, "I agree with Mark," and I was like, "What are they doing?" They were like going around and like talking to people. And bless their hearts, they tried to talk to me.
They tried to witness to you.
They did. And so what I agree with Mark is I agree with the Gospel of Mark. It was this whole thing like in 1998, 99, people, they were trying to like witness. I agree with the Gospel of Mark. And so anyway, I just remember, if I could find them today, I would apologize to them because I was not very nice. I just let them know in no uncertain terms that I
You
was
were
not
eating a
interested.
sandwich.
I was, and I wanted to be left alone. Not much has changed. I do like to eat a lot, and I do like to, just eat and be left alone when I eat, but I'm a lot nicer about it.
You heard hangry?
That's not true.
The Lord can help you with that
Yes,
too.
he does, and he does. He told
He does.
to take a nap and eat some food, and
Yep.
everything's good.
Keep going.
So I was very opposed. I was very against organized religion, and it just so happened one day as I was training to be a teacher, and I went to my student teaching placement, and a friend of mine that I was at the placement with said, "Hey, I've got to give a friend of mine a ride home in the car," and I said, "Okay, that's fine," and so there I am, probably having some kind of hair.
Oh yeah.
Oh no! Don't say it. Don't say it.
I'll be careful. She had a headscarf on. Sarah in school was known by some of my friends as the hippie that walked to class without shoes on. And there couldn't have been two more unlikely people to get in one vehicle as that got into Anthony's vehicle that day.
Yeah. So okay, like just to be perfectly clear, here I am in full hippie regalia. And out of the door comes this guy.
And then in her mind,
and he's-
hold on, in your mind, slow motion, here I come.
No. He's got this briefcase.
Hey, you're supposed to stay here.
He's got a briefcase. Just to observation. Okay, I'm just, in my mind, I'm like, this guy is a nerd.
What was I wearing?
Something nerdy.
Well, no. It was inside, wasn't it?
I'm probably in a suit and tie.
Amen.
It was ridiculous. It was just absolutely ridiculous. So anyway, so that was our first meeting, and he told me, he's like, my dad's a pastor. And
You asked.
I did.
What do your parents do?
Yeah,
my
no,
dad's
whatever.
preacher.
And I just was like, oh my goodness.
You thought I was a square.
I did.
And I thought, this liberal, left-wing, hippy-dippy.
And he wasn't wrong. Yeah, so God has a sense of humor, right? So we have these classes together at the University of Illinois, and a year goes by, and it's our senior year, and we're getting ready to go out.
She was in English department. I was in the history, social studies department.
For sure, yeah. And so we're getting ready to do our student teaching. They throw us all together to have these classes,
Joint sessions.
Joint sessions. And I remember I was sitting in the seat, and I look over to my left, and I see Andrew, and at the time, he had this curly hair. And yeah, do you hear that? I said, ooh. So I just kind of like looked over there, and I was like, and keep in mind, we did not socialize or interact hardly at all after our first meeting. We were both just like, beep. And so I don't know why I'm making sound effects
I don't
today.
know either. That was an interesting one to use, too. Keep going, baby.
And so, anyway, but I heard this voice in my head say, because I remember I had to like actually turn around, because I was like, did somebody just say that to me? Said, wouldn't it be funny if you started dating Andrew Durst? And I was like, the square? The nerd? I don't think so. However, a week later, I walk into a computer lab, and I'm walking down the aisle of the computer lab.
Now, pause a second here.
Yes.
This computer lab, the University of Illinois had purchased this building. It used to be a church building. And it was full of probably 100 computers in there. And so this would have been our first interaction where there might have been some flirtatious vibes. But I get to say we met in church. Or it was at church at one point.
Sorry.
It's got lots of sound effects.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. It's okay, it's fine.
So she is walking in the back. Now, had been talking, I like to, in my dating process at the University of Illinois there, I like to keep certain different avenues available. And there might have been a couple young ladies that were in the computer lab that I had noticed and may have said a couple words to. They're church-going gals, so I was being friendly and equal opportunist, obviously. And in she walks. And I looked back at her, and I was like, whoa. I'd never...
Things changed.
Wow. She looked good. And I was like, I realized I had the only seat in this 100-seat computer lab open. So she walked down the middle aisle and down my row, and I was pretending to type on my computer at this point, trying to just be, completely ignoring her. But at the last second,
Yeah. I was just saying, I didn't even know it was him.
Yep. At the last second, I pulled out the chair next to me. It was a swivel chair. And I gave it a spin. So it's going, whoo, 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 whoo. And I just kind of side-eyed her and said, I've been saving that seat for you.
And I said, okay. And I sat down. And, it was an interesting time. I'll just say that. And I did not want to be forward So I did
She
not.
would not give me her
I
phone
wouldn't.
number.
Girls,
I had to go
take note.
full stalker mode.
He did, because back in this would have been 2001. There was not an easy way.
I had to call up the school operator
Yes.
and get her phone number like a weirdo. Like, yes, ma'am, I couldn't get it done in the computer lab. Can you help me out? She's like, you weirdo, here it is.
Yeah, but that's the other crazy thing is that she gave you my phone
I
number.
know.
Like, that would not be happening today.
No, it
Anyway,
wouldn't. And then I, you're supposed to wait like 24 hours. I was like on the phone the next morning.
The next morning.
Coffee, you, me, let's
go.
compare lesson plans. We didn't even look at a lesson plan.
No, we sure didn't.
She kept moving her chair around the table.
No,
and
that wasn't me. That was you.
I can't. No,
No.
you were trying to get away from me. I kept moving my chair closer to you.
Oh yeah. He did. I was just like, he started. We were sitting across from each other.
I just
and
kept
then
moving
by
around that
about
table.
like 20 minutes later, he was right here next to me, just like.
Well, I had to
with-
help her with her lesson plan.
So anyway, that was our first date. So we dated for a couple weeks.
3 weeks.
It was about 3 weeks, and dated. I don't know. What do you guys say nowadays? We're talking to each other.
No, we were dating.
Yeah, we were dating.
So
we would go out.
yeah, we'd go out, hang out,
and
do things.
He, at that point, like there was, again, he was a preacher's kid. I just thought it was really cute. I was like,
Yeah.
this is great, and I had no idea where it was going.
No,
And I really, really, really liked him. Like right off the bat, I was like, I really like this guy a lot.
Yep.
And which was totally unexpected because I was not ever gonna get married. I was not gonna do any of that stuff. That's just the patriarchy. Anyway, yeah, that's how it was. And but anyway, so then he was a preacher's kid, and he one night I just remember I don't remember if you were dropping me off. I don't exactly remember how it all went down. But he just said to me, I don't think we can see each other anymore.
Well, back it off for just 1 second. I had gotten into a relationship with a girl and brought her to church, and she got boy saved, if you know what that means. Does everybody know what boy saved or girl saved is? Mm-hmm. Let me be very cautious with that. Somebody that you bring to church that you think is, whoa, he's so good looking, or wow, she's dreamy. And you bring them to church, and they like you so much that they want to do whatever they can to be with you. So they come up and get salvation, and it's just enough to keep you on the line. Be cautious who you date. Mm-hmm. And that had just happened, probably 6 months ahead of time, and that relationship broke apart. And I was just like, I'm really like Sarah. I wanted to be with her, and all I could think was think about her when I was student teaching. I was a mess, and just like couldn't figure out things. Yeah, I still like you just as. I like you more now. You are great. You're so pretty. Anyway. I really do think that. Don't laugh at that. That's serious.
Okay, oh my word.
So
Let's just keep going. Now I'm getting embarrassed. Let's just keep going. So he
I broke
dumps me.
up. I broke up with her in front of the
I
computer lab where we
didn't like
met.
it. I
Yep.
was mad.
Yes.
Oh boy.
Boy, you were
I
mad.
was so mad.
I left from there.
I'm so sorry. Will you
I
forgive
called
me?
another preacher about 3 hours away, and I said, "Hey, I need some counsel." And he said, "Well, that's good. If you broke up with the girl you were seeing, I've got a girl for you down here that you need to meet." And I was like, "All right, let's rebound quick. Come on." And so I go down there, and I talked to him the whole time. I never even went to see the girl. I kept telling him, I said, "Pastor Rick, she's wonderful, but she's not coming our way. I can't do it." And he said, "Well, let's continue to pray for her." So we prayed for her. And long story short, a couple days, or the day after, you left me a message on my voicemail.
So what happened was, what had happened was.
Well, you told me I was making the worst in that voicemail. And I'm telling you what, this is one of the most colorful voicemails I had ever gotten in my life. Before she got saved. And she told me I was making the worst mistake of my life. And I'd like to play you that voicemail right now. No, I'm just kidding.
Would that be horrible?
We can't play it in church. I don't know where it's at.
Oh, okay.
It's deleted.
So anyway, Anyway, it's deleted. Yeah, so that happened, and I was so upset because I did like him so much, and so I was like, all right, well, he's breaking up with me, and he was clear. He was like, you are not a Christian.
Yes. She
I
wouldn't
cannot
even go to church.
Yeah, he's like,
Anytime I brought it
cannot.
up, she's like, nope, not doing it.
I was like, all right, then, I'm gonna go to church. So it was about 9 o'clock at night, and back in 2001, churches did not lock their doors. So I found myself walking into maybe a Lutheran, maybe, I don't know. I just walked in the back door of a church. And I remember sitting in that church. Nobody else was there. And I was like, all right. And I honestly think that I expected something to happen. I can remember thinking, okay, I'm going to do this. Here I am doing this. I expect something to happen. I just didn't know that what was going to happen was going to be delayed a few days. So I walk into that church, I sit down. I remember looking up at the altar and looking up at everything that they had, and I was just thinking, all right, if there's a God, where you at? Which is a big question. So, I'm telling you that God can save absolutely anyone. Even somebody
Amen.
not raised in church, no interest. I had zero interest.
Atheist.
An atheist. Zero interest. And God will use any way that he will get a hold of you any way he can. But I did ask the question. So, time goes on. And a couple days later, I was writing student teaching. And I writing in the car, student teaching with some other girls. And not ironically, there are no coincidences. Both of these girls that I was writing to school with were both Christians. They believed in the Bible, they believed in Jesus, they went to church. Of the entire 35 people in my English teaching class, those were the only two Christians. And I end up in the car with both of them, driving 30 minutes to and from the place I was student teaching. Coincidences don't happen.
I'm going to just say, isn't God good?
So we're driving, and this had just happened. Andrew dumped me. I had gone to church. I was just like, all right. I knew they were Christians because they were very open about their faith in class. And so I was sitting in the back of the car. And I said, hey, all right, guys, I got a question for you. They were like, oh, yeah? And I said, who is God? It's like we almost drove off the road. And so my friend Praise whips her head around, and she looks at me, and she says, what did you just say? I said, who is God? Why is that? Can I not ask that? And she's like, well, are you really asking me who God is? I was like, yeah, why? And she said, because just last night, when I was doing my Bible study and devotion, I asked the Lord to send me somebody that I could tell who Jesus was to. And here you are the next day asking me who God is.
Well, glory to God.
And I was like, oh, that's weird. That's a little freaky. Woo, spooky, spooky. I was like, okay, all right. And years later, actually, I met up with my friend Praise, and I said, do you remember when I asked you that in the car? She said, yeah. She's like, I just couldn't believe you were the one asking me. She's like, I knew how you were. She's like, I just couldn't believe it. So then, but I would go to parties, and while I was at parties, I would have people.
Not like birthday parties.
Not like birthday parties. And I would have people say to me, hey, these would not be people that you would think knew anything about God. And I don't know that they did, to be perfectly frank. Years later, thinking back, I think it was probably just the work of the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
But there would be people being like, you probably should pay attention to God. In the middle of these parties, out of nowhere, people would just start talking to me about God. And it was just so weird. I would have people pointing out, on Country Bob's barbecue sauce, there's an ichthus, which is the fish, which is the representation of, so people know that that company is owned. There's a long history to it. But basically, anything that had to do with religion, anything that had to do with God, people are like, hey, look at this. This has to do with God. And these would be people that have no church background, nothing. And here they are.
Speaking of which, you
Talking
put
to
one of those fish on the back of your car. Please act like a Christian.
When you drive.
Yeah, I know who you are.
Yeah.
Yeah, just a side note.
So all of these strange things are happening, like just weird coincidences. I mean, again, not coincidences. But so then I do the only thing I know how to do. I call Andrew, and I'm like, so, you know that other day when you were
Well,
like...
you tell this first, right?
No, that's because that was after we were back together.
No, you told me you were reading that, and then
Is that how... Oh, was
Yeah,
that...
yeah, that's it. It's
This
been a
is
while.
why we do this together, because we're
been a while.
starting to... We're older now, we forget.
Sweetie,
Yeah, so
sweetie,
I'm-
this part first, sweetie.
Gotta go here.
All right.
Here's your teeth. You dropped them over here.
That's my glass eye.
All right, keep going.
So at the time, I worked at a place called Dick's Sporting Goods. It was a sporting goods store. I was just working, and I walked into Dick's Sporting Goods one day in the break room. Now, again, nobody at Dick's Sporting Goods that I knew of was a Christian or cared anything about the things of God. So I walk into the break room, and I notice, like, there's a white microwave sitting in the back of the break room. And I walk over there because I see there's this book sitting on top, this little tiny book sitting on top of the microwave. And I'm like, what is that? And so I walk over, and it was a Bible.
Little Gideon's white New Testament. Thank the Lord for the Gideons and the work they do.
Well,
Leaving those Bibles for us to steal.
you can't steal a
I was
Gideon's
told by a
Bible.
Gideon, you can't steal one.
You can't steal a Gideon's Bible. So anyway, well, we were also told that the white Bible
Was
is
a
a
nurse's.
nurse's Bible, which makes it even more strange that it was on, that it was even there. So anyway, so I took that Bible home, and I was like, I should probably try to read this or something. And so I just flipped it open.
These are
And
the
I
words.
read
These
these
are the
words.
words. The first words she'd read out of the Bible. Woo!
And you that were sometime alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now hath he reconciled in the body of his flesh through death to present you holy and unblameable and unreprovable in his sight, if ye continue in the faith, grounded and settled, and be not moved away from the hope of the gospel which ye have heard, and which was preached to every creature which is under heaven. And I just remember thinking, and me? And it was. I so clearly, in that moment, I was asking, all right, what do you sound like? And a voice very clearly told me, I sound like this.
Amen. Well, she called me after she found that Bible. And I was, kind of in despair. I had an observation. I was student teaching, and an observer came in, and I just trashed a lesson plan in front of, a teacher that was giving me a grade. In front of students, I was just completely worthless. And I was just so heartbroken by this little hippie girl that I had to break up with. And she called me, I think it was that evening or the evening after I had just a disaster in class. And she said, I've been to church and I stole a Bible. I said, let's go out for coffee.
And so,
And let me also just put in a plug for this way. I mean, Brother Durst I'm very opinionated about things, and especially about the Word of God. She told me in that phone call, she said, as I was reading that Bible, that beautiful King James English, she didn't know it was King James English. She was a studier of English literature. The King James Bible. She's a Shakespearean scholar. And she was reading out of this Bible and said, it's beautiful. I said, yes, it is. That's the King James. Well, I didn't say it that time, but I am right now.
that's
Amen.
right. Yeah, and so all of these
Yes.
things, these weird coincidences in my life are happening. And I'll be honest with you, I am who I am. God made me the way I am for a reason. I was stubborn. I was resistant.
Amen.
There's good and bad about that, it's good and bad. More good now than bad.
Yeah, that's
God,
good.
God can use what was once our foibles to do something great. So, so we're sitting there, and he had kind of come back, and that's when he really started talking. And he did not put any pressure on me. Just to be clear, he wasn't like, you got it. It was very gentle, like, why don't you come to church? Like, come on, and he'd take being very cautious because, again, coming from a place of like someone had received boy religion, it wasn't serious. He wasn't jumping full into a relationship again, but he was like
Cautious.
very cautious, like come to
But,
church,
but
like,
optimistic.
but optimistic.
Yes.
Yeah. And so, all these things are going on. And so he's talking to me. I'm like meeting people who are talking to me about the Lord. Like the girls that I was riding to school with are still talking to me about the Lord. And I'm just
Still not saved.
still not saved, still just resistant to it all. But I was so confused. And I just needed somebody to tell me something. So I called the only person that I knew, which would have been the pastor's wife of that high school, that church that I had gone to in that small town, in that high school. And when I say I had gone to that church, I had like visited a couple times, right? So like it wasn't a regular thing at all. But I called Sally because she was the only one that I knew. She was the pastor's wife. I was like, well, if anybody knows anything, it's got to be a pastor's wife. So I call her. I'm like, listen, Sally, here's the skinny. This is what's been going down. Boom, 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 boom. This weird thing and this weird thing and that and that and that.
All the instances
All
that
the
have to take
instances.
place.
And she's just listening to me. And she's like, huh. She's like, that is so interesting, Sarah. And keep in mind, I had not talked to this woman. At this point, I was a senior in college. I had not talked to this woman for 4 years. No phone calls, no conversations. There was no Facebook at the time. There was none of that.
Time before Facebook?
Yes, that's when the time. Bless the Lord that there was no Facebook in those days.
Oh, the golden years.
I mean, for real. How many of us older people are glad we were not raised when there was social media? You can get blessed on that one.
Yeah.
So anyway, because the internet never forgets.
All right.
Just remember that. Bonus.
You're going into mom mode.
I can in a second.
All right. Keep going, baby.
So Sally calls me, or I call her, and I'm telling her about all this stuff that's going on. And she says, that is so interesting, Sarah. She's like, when did all this stuff start to when was all this stuff going down? And I said, well, the past couple weeks, the past 2 or 3 weeks. And she was just silent. There's like nothing on the other end. And I'm like, hello?
Just a reminder, she hadn't talked, seen, phone calls, nothing. Completely cut off. 4 years. At least 4 years.
At least. And I said, well, and she said, well, that is just really interesting because last night I was in church and for one reason or another, I started thinking about you and I felt impressed to go to the altar and to pray that you would get your life right with God.
Let me just tell you, don't stop praying. Don't you dare stop praying. God is working unbeknownst to us and just sorting out the different lines and the tracks and the map of life for you and the person that you're praying for. Don't you dare stop praying. That lady had been praying. Intercessory prayer still works. We're still praying for Sarah's parents every night, every morning. God is going to answer that prayer. Don't you dare quit. Keep on praying.
And so that really stuck in my craw. I was able to think and rationalize this comment away or that comment away, but when somebody tells you directly that they had been praying for you, something about that stuck. And so the next Wednesday night when Andrew asked me if I wanted to go to church, I said, yeah, I think I should go. And we went to church on a Wednesday night, and we sat through the sermon, and we had been talking to Pastor Rick Jones. He would come up sometimes, and he happened to be there that Wednesday night, and he just said, and Andrew, after the service, we talked a little bit, and they were both like, well, I think you should get saved. And I was like, okay. I'm like, that's fine. I was just, I don't know, there's just that resistance. And
We go out of the building.
we walk out of the building and we get into Andrew's van.
I had a big GMC van that was painted like a matching bass boat. I never had the bass boat, but it had a Ranger boat on the back, a sticker on the back. It was a beautiful van.
I think it had carpet in it.
Oh,
didn't
it had lots of carpet in it.
Was,
It
and
was
like
beautiful.
twinkly lights. Like,
yep.
Not twinkly lights, but
Well, just had some lights
strange
inside.
lights. Anyway, it's crazy. So we get into this van. He's gonna take me home, and he puts the van in reverse, and he starts to swing that big old van around, and just so clearly, I just heard, if you don't do it now, you'll never do it. And I said, stop the van! I said, stop it! Stop
So I keep rolling, and I'm going around our Sunday school buses. We had a line of Sunday school buses, and I can just remember careening around those buses and hitting the parking space.
Sideways.
And she doesn't even wait for the van to stop. She jumps out while the van is still rolling, and she's running through the building. She didn't know you're not supposed to run in church. And I'm like, please don't run. And she starts down the middle aisle of the church there in Urbana, Illinois, Faith Crusaders Church, and she's saying, Pastor Rick, Pastor Rick. Pastor Rick's behind the platform, and he comes out, and he's just kind of wide-eyed, and here comes Sarah, and I finally get the van and park, and I come in after her, and she's like, I got to get saved.
I just got to do it. I just
And
got
so-
to do it. So we get down there.
Yep.
And I parade the sinner's prayer.
Yep.
And I don't think it quite went like this.
I
but
was
he
there.
says it did.
I was there. All right, Pastor Rick was here. Sarah was there, and I was here. Front row, this side. She prays through. And she gets up and says, he did it. He did it. He did it. He did it.
I was so much more graceful
She
than
never
that.
left the pivot foot. She wasn't dancing, all of you that get worried about that. But she just like an old saint of God. Just, he did it. He did it. I'm telling you what, he did. She's a wretch before she got saved.
Well, aren't we all? I know I'm not alone in that. But I mean, ultimately, that started everything. I mean,
Amen.
that was just the absolute beginning. Because after that, things got really
Just keep
real, really real. I mean, I was like, well, I guess I'm saved. I guess I'm doing this, so I guess that means I don't need this CD, or
Well,
this CD,
I didn't,
or this
I-
CD.
Let me just tell you, I
or
didn't.
this CD.
Hold on. I did not say, well, now that you're saved, here's the church manual.
He didn't actually say much.
You know, that isn't always the most helpful. We let the Lord work on her. I didn't have to tell her about the CDs. But I tell you what, the Mississippi River that we were traveling across when she got convicted about the music and her CD cover is littered with raunchy, gross music.
Yeah,
It
it wasn't
wasn't-
gross.
Well, it wasn't something I could listen to when I was growing up.
Right. So anyway, so that went. You know.
But she'd just get convicted about something in the car, and out the window would go. Just choo, choo, choo.
Just didn't need it. Just didn't need it anymore. You know. I mean, yeah. So I mean, people
Then she got convicted about her friends. Whew.
threw them. They were a lot heavier. It was a lot harder to move them. Just saying. No, but I mean, I did. Like,
They had to drag the river to pull out the bodies.
Terrible. So no, but I mean, I did. Like, I legitimately cut people out, and everybody's like, "Where did you go?" I'm like, "I see ya." I'm like, "I don't need you
And
anymore."
sometimes some of you all need to do that. It's not something that is helping you. Your friends.
You're not. Let me just say this. You are not. Like, you get saved, and like your friends are still bad. You are not gonna influence them for good. Nope. I'm sorry. You are just not.
You're not a super Christian yet.
You're not, like, no. Maybe years from now, perhaps, once you are more rooted and grounded. But I see so many people be like, they get saved, and then they're like, I'm just gonna, like, keep being an influence Oh, no, you
They
are
will
not.
drag
They will
you
drag
right back
you
to
back.
where you were.
If they won't do it, like, obviously, and be like, oh, make fun of you and all that, they'll do it some way, somehow.
Just subtle ways.
Just get.
We got to keep moving, or
Just
we're going to get fired.
I know, we're going to be fired. So
Okay.
So anyway, get them out of your lives. That's what I did. I had to get them gone.
She pitched things. She
And there
pitched
comes
friends.
a time at which
Well, let's tell about this. What did we get her involved in? We got a Sunday school bus route. I got her on the bus. I put kids next to her. We enlisted her right into the fight for the good and the right. Makes a difference when you get a new convert. Enlist them. Put them right in. Well, they're not ready, quite ready. Sit with them. I didn't say give them the adult Sunday school class. They're not ready for that. But can they hand out bubble gum on a church bus? Absolutely. She's a good bubble gum distributor. That's all I got. But we need to get to this.
Yeah, so there I am, and I'm going along and going along. I'm starting to go to church. I'm helping in the Sunday school, and I don't know, but there was just something. And I said to Andrew one day, I was like,
Oh, this is hilarious.
I said, Andrew, I said, hey, do you know that there are churches where like the ladies only wear skirts? Did you know that? And he's just like,
I've heard of those types of churches. She's been going to one for a couple months. But that's just a point of reference. Our people weren't, hey, you got to do this, and you got to do that.
Yeah.
They just let her grow. The Holy Spirit revealed these things to her.
and so anyway,
It was a Wednesday night after church.
it was another Wednesday night, and he was driving me home.
Well, we stopped by my friend Corey's house.
Mm-hmm.
We were hanging out there, and I said, Corey also came from an old-fashioned church. I said, Corey or Sarah got saved. And he goes, you tell her about your mom? I knew exactly what Corey was talking about.
It was code. It was secret code.
He grew up in a separated household from the world. I grew up in a separated household from the world. And he was talking about the way we dress. You tell her about your mom, which meant you tell her about your mom and how she dresses and the standards that we hold. I was like, no, Corey, I didn't tell her about my mom. I have a mom. And she's like, what about your mom? I was like, baby, just let Jesus lead you. She's like, what about your mom? We get back into the van again, and she's like, what about your mom? I'm like, she loves me. I don't know what I was saying to her. I was just like, baby, Lord's helping you. Just stick with Jesus. I was just like, I do not want to have this conversation. And you were wearing a denim skirt that night. It was a Wednesday night.
I have no recollection of
I mean,
this.
I would say the ladies at our church wear dresses to church, which was absolutely true. I just kind of let the whole other points of time where they also are modestly dressed to her own discernment.
Yeah,
And
well,
the Lord was helping her.
and so
She said, what about your mom? And she says, we go to one of those churches.
it just all kind of clicked.
And you said, nope.
I did. I said no. I was like, absolutely not. I was like, absolutely not. Now you have to understand, from my perspective, I had gotten rid of everything. There was literally nothing else. I had given up this. I wasn't wearing makeup. I wasn't listening to the same music. I wasn't going to the same places. I didn't have the same friends. Everything was different. And this was like one other thing. And that moment, I was just like, I can't do another thing. How can I do another thing? I've done, right? So I got out of the car, and I just said, nope, can't do it. I get out of the car, or the van, and I slammed the van.
No, you didn't. You left the door wide open.
I left the door open, I guess. And I walk out into the middle of the yard at my house, and, I was not happy. And
Standing under an oak tree.
standing under this big old oak tree, I just remember I was so upset. I just looked out and I just yelled, screamed at the top of my lungs, "What else do you want from me?"
All right, pause. You would have been out in the yard like this, so I'll be over here in the driveway. I had still not gotten out of the van. I'm watching her going, she's just going at me. "No, I won't do that. No, I've gone this far, but I'm not going that far. No, absolutely not." Gets out of the van, goes over and stands in and is underneath the tree, and I'm just white-knuckled steering wheel going, "Oh, well, it was nice knowing you. You're really pretty. I guess we're broken up now." I'm just like, having a romantic development of my own over here. And then she screams at God at the top of her lungs. And I'm telling you what, she kind of mimicked it there, but I'm just telling you, hopefully I can block this microphone a little bit, but just the volume, just cut my mic for a second. It was this loud. "What else do you want?" And I was like, "Lord, I'm here when you strike her dead." She's over there. Because I was just like, "Baby, you don't talk to God like that."
I have always just told the Lord and we talk to each other, and I just talked about stuff. Not like that anymore, but I do sometimes cry out to him, and we're just very open.
Well,
Nothing to hide.
Tell the rest.
So I go out there, and I'm standing there underneath the tree, and when I screamed and yelled, "What else do you want from me?" the Lord, who is a gentleman, who does not respond in anger, who does not scream at us, told me one word. He said it simply, and he said it quietly. When I asked the Lord, "What else do you want from me?" he said, "Everything." And at that moment, I couldn't argue.
I could not hear the Lord. I'm still over here going, "I've got to get out of here." But what I saw, from my perspective, is a little gal that had been just freshly saved go from, "No, no, no, I won't do that," to this humble, melting under the subjection of Almighty God. And I'm just telling you what, a complete change. The Lord saved my wife. He asked her for everything. And I'm still like, I did not hear the everything. And I'm just looking over at her. And she comes back to the van. She said,
Hey, wait a minute.
"Oh, sorry, I'll pause."
You always tell this part, and I like to tell it.
Okay, Mom.
So I spin around, and I head back in the car, and I march right up, put my head up, sit down in the seat, looking out the front. And he looks at me. He goes, "Well?" And I look at him, and I said, "I guess this means I have to wear skirts now." "And you that were sometime alienated and enemies in your mind by wicked works, yet now hath he reconciled in the body of his flesh through death to present you holy and unblameable and unreprovable in his sight, if ye continue in the faith, grounded and settled, and be not moved away from the hope of the gospel." My salvation story, our story, is...
I think I should tell that real quick. This can be our last year, but I think I'm going to tell this. Maybe they'll not have us back because we went over time. But she got saved. Gloriously changed. And I'm a church kid. Daddy's a preacher. My mom is a preacher's wife. That's usually how that works. And
What?
Daddy's a preacher. Mama's a preacher's wife. That's usually how that works.
Oh.
That's how we.
Oh.
Yeah. Never mind. We'll work that out later. You're a preacher's wife. Even during the beginning of her relationship with the Lord, was kind of floundering spiritually. And the Lord used the salvation of my girlfriend to get my attention. And I was like, oh, I got a live one. And the Lord spoke to me. It's time to be serious. It's time to be an example. She's going to watch every move you make. And ladies and gentlemen, it is so pivotal. It is so important that if you're going to call yourself a Christian, to act as Christ, to walk and talk as Christ did. And I tell you what, her getting right with the Lord established my walk. Isn't God good? Thank the Lord. Go ahead.
That's just the beginning.
It is.
And you know, we're out of time now, but I think that if there's anything God has taken us and used us in ways that we could never have imagined. He's taken us to places we would have never imagined. There is nothing grievous about serving the Lord. There's not one thing that I regret from that day till now, other than the times I have messed up or made a mistake. But God has been so faithful to us, and He's carried us through so many things. And He keeps doing it, and it is a joy to serve Him. And
we're not missing out on anything
Not
this old
one thing.
wicked world has for you. The world's going to try to get you off on with detour signs and neon lights saying this is an easier route or this is a more trendy route. Let me just tell you, we have the time of our lives being old-fashioned second lesson Christians. That we're having a blast. We could not handle any more excitement. You should see our household. It's crazy nuts. But we have fun serving Jesus.
yes, we do. And there's nothing that this world is going to throw at us that is going to entice us to move and change in any way. So
Read the lyrics to that song.
which one? Both of them?
I don't care. Just
Okay.
real quick.
Yeah, we always like to end with a song.
We won't sing it.
We won't. Maybe one day. We always threaten that we're going to sing for them.
No, we're not singing today.
It's just so sad.
But read the words.
We are not blessed in that area. We think that these couple of songs really sort of capture everything, kind of bring it to a close here. The lyrics are, I've tested many waters and I've sailed a lot of seas, searching for one that would bring lasting peace. Those worldly new ways only brought a bitter flood. But I found what I needed when I saw the blood. And today's modern thinkers do not want to hear about the shed blood of our Savior so dear. The flow has been denied in their teaching today. That flow, that one that cleanses us from all sin.
Amen.
But I'm not ashamed to say it, the blood's the only way. And I will take the old stream that flows from the fountain, sweet Calvary's mountain that makes sinners clean, tried and tested, it's been faithful, never failing to redeem. You can have the new rivers. I'll take the old stream. And last,
It was old-fashioned singing.
it was old-fashioned singing and old-fashioned preaching that got my attention and got me to thinking about the way I was living and where I would be if the cold hand of death laid hold on me. But the Holy Spirit used it, and He drew me to Calvary, and He showed me how Jesus died in my place. With my heart I believed it, by faith I received it, and that's how I got saved. Thank you.
I'll end it with this. The devil is a liar. That's all I got. The devil is a liar.
Stop. I gotta get the thing and pull him off.
The devil is a liar. He will try to deceive you, but I'm just telling you what, this
All right, stand with me if you will. Have you enjoyed these afternoon sessions? Amen. All right, we're going to dismiss in prayer. A few announcements quickly before we do that. Brother Nick Ryan, he is leading the choir. There's going to be a choir that sings in this evening's service, all right? If you would like to be a part of that choir, please come up here to the platform on these steps right here, and he will give you further instructions after we close in prayer. We do ask that PR students, if you would come up here and be involved in that as well, we would appreciate it. And after that is over, or if you're not going to be in the choir, supper is over in the James Bates Youth Center. All right, let's pray. Lord, we love you this afternoon. We're thankful for how that you've been good to us throughout this day. We're thankful that we have yet another service tonight where we can lift up your name, where we can worship you. And God, I pray that you would please help us to listen, to take into account what was presented here this afternoon. And God, if there's anyone here that has not yet surrendered their all to you, I pray that you would help them to say, Lord, be merciful to me, a sinner, and Lord, that they would surrender to you. And Lord, if there's someone here that needs to surrender their all, to be entirely sanctified, would you make that a reality in their life as well? Please be with us throughout the rest of this day. Please keep us safe as we travel home, some that are traveling today and tomorrow. And God, for everything that you do, we'll thank you and praise you. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, if you'd like to be in the choir, please come forward.